Session is called to order. All please rise for the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiging, sa manlulupit, di ka pasisingil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong paghaw, may nilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na naglilingling, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walamig pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga ating at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Please remain standing for the invocation to be led by the lady from the 8th District of Cavite, the Honorable Aniela Bianca D. Tolentino.
The sovereign Filipino people affirm its belief and trust in you, Almighty God. We again implore your aid for a just and humane society. We pray for a government that will stand for the true Filipino ideals and aspirations. We pray for the upliftment of the lives of our less fortunate countrymen and for a unified leadership that will inspire and bring out the best in Filipinos. We pray for the triumph of the common good, for the leaders of this country to fight for the conservation and development of the national patrimony. For the next few months, the members of the House of Representatives and the officials of other government offices will be working hand in hand for the first budget that the newly elected officials of the country will be enacting and administering. We pray that you supply the leaders of this country with wisdom in order to come up with sound budgetary and financial plans to help the Philippines fully recover from the pandemic. We pray for victory for the Filipino people as deliberations for next year's national budget are being tackled. We pray for your guidance so that the policies behind our enactment will be concretized and be felt on the ground. We pray that the implementation of our legislation will bring progress and usher a better future for our nation. Almighty God, we humbly pray that you bring unity to our country and carry our people to a more vibrant and prosperous economy. Amen.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we call the roll of members.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. Motion is approved, and the Secretary General is directed to read the roll of members.
Roll call of members. Honorable Representatives. Abalos. Abante. Abunda. Acharon. Asidre. Akop. Adyong. Advincula. Agaraw. Alba. Albano. Almario. Alonte. Almonte. Alvarez Jose. Alvarez Mercedes. Alvarez Pantaleon. Amante. Amatong. Angara. Aquino. Arbison. Arenas. Arrogancia. Asistio. Ataide. Omentado. Balindong. Barba. Barbers. Baronda. Barzaga. Baskug. Bautista. Bautista Lim. Benitez. Bernos. Billones. Biron. Bolilia. Bondok. Bongalon. Bordado. Bosita. Briones. Brosas. Buhain. Bulot Begtang. Bustos. Cabredo. Cagas. Kahayon Uy. Calderon. Calixto. Campos. Kawagdan. Cardema. Cari. Castro Franz. Castro Jean. Celeste. Chan. Chato. Chua. Chungalaw. Ko Angelica Natasha. Po Elizaldi. Po Pilar. Po Juanco Jaime. Po Juanco Mark. Colada. Coliantes. Corvera. Cruz Ambrosio. Cruz Ricardo. Cua. Quaresma. Dagoo. Dalipe. Dalog. Dayang Hirang. Daza. De Jesus. De Venecia. Defensor. Del Mar. De Los Santos. Dimaporo Muhammad Khalid. Dimaporo Siti Amina. Dionisio. Domingo. Duavit. Duhali. Duterte. D. Faustino Ino. D. Faustino Michael. D. Ian Paul. Ecleo. Emano. Enciso. Enverga. Escudero. Espares. Espina. Estrella. Yudela. Fariñas. Fernandez. Ferrer Antonio. Ferrer Juliet Marie. Flores. Fortes. Frasco. Fresnedi. Puentebella. Galeyos. Garcia Albert. Garcia Dante. Garcia Jose Arturo. Garcia Maria Angela. Garcia Pablo Jan. Garcia Vincent. Guardiola. Garin. Gasataya. Gatchalian. Gato, Go Ed Christopher, Go Mark, Goles, Gomez, Gonzaga, Gonzales Aurelio, Gonzales Neptali, Gonzales Sandro, Goriseta, Guico, Gintu, Gulyas, Gutierrez, Hagedorn, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera, Horibata, Javier, Ko Olga Ara, Ko Ricardo, Ko Wilton, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lacson Noel, Lagman, Lagon Daphne, Lagon Sani, Lara, Lazatin, Lee, Legarda, Libanan, Limkaychong, Loyola, Luistro, Lumayag, Makapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Magsino, Malapitan, Mangawang, Manikis, Manuel, Marañon, Marcoleta, Marcos, Mariano Hernandez, Marinho, Marquez, Martinez, Mastura, Matibag, Matugas, Mendoza, Mercado, Mercado Revilla, Miguel, Momo, Morden, Nava, Nisay, Noel, Nograles Juan Fidel, Nograles Margarita, Nolasco, Uwaminal, Olaso, Olivares, Ongchuan, Ordanes, Ortega, Uwano Dizon, Padiernos, Paduano, Paglas, Palma, Panaligan, Pancho, Panotes, Pascual, Peña, Pimentel, Plaza, Pleito, Primicias Agabas, Pumaren, Puno, Kimbo, Rama, Recto, Regencia, Revilla Brian, Revilla Ramon Jolo, Reyes, Rilio, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez Eulogio, Rodriguez Rufus, Roman, Romero, Romualdez Ferdinand Martin, Romualdez Yeda Marie, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Sali, Salimbangon, Salo, Salvame, Santos, Saulug, Silverio, Singson Richel, Singson Ronald, Singson Mihan, Solon, Soriano, Suwan, Swansing Horacio, Swansing Micaela Angela, Suarez, Taliado, Tamayo, Tambunting, Tan Joseph, Tan Keith Micah, Tan Reynolds Michael, Tan Samir, Tan Stephen James, Tan Tambut, Tan Chay, Tan Huatco, Tariela, Teodoro, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tiangco, Tieng, Tolentino, Tulfo Jocelyn, Tulfo Ralph Wendell, Tupas, Tutor, T, Umali, Unabia, Ungab, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso Tuazon, Vergara, Versosa, Villa, Villafuerte Luis Raymond, Villafuerte Miguel Luis, Villanueva, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Violago, Yap Christiantel, Yap Christopher Son, Yap Edvic, Yap Eric, Yu Divina Grace, Yu Jazel Victoria, Yulo, Zamora Amparo Maria, Zamora Maria Carmen, Zamora Isabel Maria, Zubiri, Mr. Speaker, the roll call shows that 311 members responded to the call.
With 311 members responding to the call, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to move for the approval of the journal of the previous session. Journal number 13 dated August 24, 2022. I so move.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. Motion is approved, and the journal number 13, dated Wednesday, August 24, 2022, is hereby approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we now proceed with the reference of business and request the Secretary General be directed to read the titles of bills and resolutions on first reading, as well as communications and committee reports. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. Motion is approved, and the Secretary General is directed to read the titles of bills and resolutions on first reading for referral to the appropriate committees.
Reference of business. Bills on first reading. House Bill 3843, Reintroducing Divorce in the Philippines, by Representatives Brosas, Castro, Franz, and Manuel.
To the Committee on Population and Family Relations.
House Bill 3844, Providing for a New Charter of the Land Bank of the Philippines, by Representative
To the
Salceda.
Committee on Banks and Financial Intermediaries.
House Bill 3845, repealing RA 4635, declaring it a national policy to prohibit the commercial importation of textile articles, commonly known as used clothing and rags, setting national policies on the commercial importation of used textiles, by Representative
To
Salceda.
the Committee on Trade and Industry.
House Bill 3846, to encourage more Filipino lawyers to serve the people and join the Public Attorney's Office, establishing the Abogado para sa Bayan Return Service Program, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Justice.
House Bill 3847, establishing an Academy Recovery and Accessible Learning Program, by Representative
To the
Tambunting.
Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 3848, requiring traffic signal poles to be equipped with accessible pedestrian signals, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill 3849, granting additional leaves for victims of domestic violence, providing parameters therefore, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Women and Gender Equality.
House Bill 3850, prohibiting the demonstration, performance, or exhibition in public of certain sexual acts and the production, importation, sale, or distribution, or public showing or display of pornographic materials, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Public Information.
House Bill 3851, penalizing prank callers to emergency hotlines, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
House Bill 3852, enabling banks to expand service delivery channels through cash agents and providing guidelines therefore, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Banks and Financial Intermediaries.
House Bill 3853, mandating law enforcement personnel to wear a body camera during law enforcement and special operations, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
House Bill 3854, granting discount privileges to medical frontliners, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Health.
Establishing House Bill 3855, establishing special economic zones in the municipalities of the 1st District of Maguindanao and in the city of Cotabato, by Representative Mastura.
To the Committee on Economic Affairs and the Committee on Trade and Industry.
House Bill 3856, instituting policies for the protection and promotion of the welfare of workers or independent contractors in the film, television, and radio entertainment industry, by Representative Mastura.
To the Committee on Labor and Employment.
House Bill 3857, adjusting the minimum amount for death indemnity, moral, and exemplary damages under the Civil Code of the Philippines, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Revision of Laws.
House Bill 3858, increasing the minimum salary grade level of social worker position from salary grade 11 to salary grade 15, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Appropriations.
House Bill 3859, establishing an Adopt a Library program, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 3860, amending certain sections of the Philippine Nursing Act of 2002, providing for an advanced nursing education program, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
House Bill 3861, providing for the protection of the rights of airline passengers and penalizing acts in violation thereof, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill 3862, to require all government building construction to have rain harvesting facility, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Public Works and Highways.
House Bill 3863, amending the mandatory reporting of notifiable diseases and health events of Public Health Concern Act, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 3864, amending Section 14B of the Social Security Act of 2018, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization.
House Bill 3865, providing protection to consumers and their medical necessities during public health emergencies, epidemics or outbreaks, and pandemics, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Trade and Industry.
House Bill 3866, protecting the rights of athletes to represent the Philippines as part of the national team and providing penalties for violations thereof, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Youth and Sports Development.
House Bill 3867, mandating annual psychiatric, psychological, drug, and physical tests for police officers, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
House Bill 3868, mandating government financial institutions to create a bank account for every unbanked Filipino, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Banks and Financial Intermediaries.
House Bill 3869, granting distinctive honors and privileges to national athletes, creating a national endowment fund for sports heroes, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Youth and Sports Development.
House Bill 3870, establishing the TESDA Manpower Training and Youth Center in Barangay BF Homes, Parañaque City, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 3871, amending the Book Publishing Industry Development Act, provides for the scanning and conversion of public school textbooks into e-books and other digital formats, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 3872, ensuring the welfare and protection of business process outsourcing workers in the Philippines, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Labor and Employment.
House Bill 3873, creating a Bureau of Private Schools, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 3874, providing for a 5-day special emergency leave for all workers in the public and private sectors directly affected by natural calamities or disasters, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation and the Committee on Labor and Employment.
House Bill 3875, creating the National Cancer Institute of the Philippines, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Health.
House Bill 3876, creating a database of products containing probable carcinogens, by Representative
To the
Tambunting.
Committee on Health.
House Bill 3877, reapportioning the Lone District of Eastern Samar into 2 legislative districts, by Representative Abunda.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Bill 3878, establishing an inland freshwater fish hatchery in Aringay and Tubao, La Union, by Representative Garcia Dante.
To the Committee on Aquaculture and Fisheries Resources.
House Bill 3879, providing for the establishment of the Heart Center of the Philippines, Visayas in Liloan, Cebu, by Representative
To the
Frasco.
Committee on Health.
House Bill 3880, naming the 5 stations of the LRT-1, Cavite Extension within the territorial jurisdiction of Parañaque City, by Representative
To
Olivares.
the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill 3881, strengthening and revitalizing the Philippine Self-Reliant Defense Posture Program, developing the Philippine national defense industry, by Representative Recto.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security.
House Bill 3882, instituting reforms in the profession of midwifery, strengthening the Board of Midwifery, by Representative Salo.
To the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
House Bill 3883, creating the Department of Disaster Resilience, by Representative Flores.
To the Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Disaster Resilience.
House Bill 3884, granting Philippine citizenship to Juvenal Sanso, by Representatives Zamora Isabel Maria and Zamora Amparo Maria.
To the Committee on Justice.
House Bill 3885, amending certain provisions of Executive Order 209 as amended in order to define and introduce divorce, by Representatives Yap Edvic, Tulfo Jocelyn, and
To
Soriano.
the Committee on Population and Family Relations.
House Bill 3886, establishing the National Framework for Water Resource Management and creating the Department of Water Resources and the Water Regulatory Commission, by Representatives Yap Edvic, Tulfo Jocelyn, and Soriano.
To the Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Public Works and Highways.
House Bill 3887, creating a sustainable fiscal framework for the pension system of the military and uniformed personnel, providing mechanisms for the disposition of government assets for the purpose, by Representatives Yap Edvic, Tulfo Jocelyn, and Soriano.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security and the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
House Bill 3888, establishing the fiscal regime for the mining industry, by Representative Colada.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
House Bill numbers 3889 and 3890, converting certain roads into national roads in certain municipalities of Capiz, by Representative Castro
To
Jane.
the Committee on Public Works and Highways.
House Bill 3891, declaring the island of Mindoro a mining-free zone, prohibiting all forms of mining operation and activity, by Representative Panaligan.
To the Committee on Natural Resources.
House Bill 3892, establishing Catanduanes Abaca Research and Development Office, by Representative Rodriguez Eulogio.
To the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
House Bill 3893, modernizing and converting the Kabugao School of Handicraft and Cottage Industries to be known as the Bicol Technical and Vocational Institute, by Representative Eulogio.
To the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 3894, establishing the archipelagic sea lanes in the Philippine archipelagic waters, prescribing the rights and obligations of foreign ships and aircraft exercising the right of archipelagic sea lanes passage, by Representative Arenas.
To the Committee on Foreign Affairs.
House Bill 3895, declaring the maritime zones under the jurisdiction of the Republic of the Philippines, by Representative Arenas.
To the Committee on Foreign Affairs.
House Bill 3896, providing for a new passport law, by Representative Arenas.
To the Committee on Foreign Affairs.
House Bill 3897, strengthening the National Research Council of the Philippines for the promotion of research work along scientific lines, by Representative Marquez.
Committee on Science and Technology.
House Bill 3898, providing for a comprehensive atomic energy regulatory framework, creating the Philippine Atomic Energy Regulatory Commission, by Representative Marquez.
To the Special Committee on Nuclear Energy.
House Bill 3899, establishing a regular DFA consular office in Aklan, by Representative Marquez.
To the Committee on Foreign Affairs.
House Bill 3900, making the position of a tourism officer mandatory in the municipal, city, and provincial levels, by Representative Marquez.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Bill numbers 3901 to 3909, declaring every year special non-working holidays in the municipalities of Hagonoy, Kiblawan, Sulop, Malalag, Padada, Santa Cruz, Magsaysay, Bansalan, and Matanao, all in the province of Davao del Sur, in commemoration of founding anniversaries, by Representative
To the
Cagas.
Committee on Local Government.
House Bill 3910, authorizing the release of the just share of Poblacion 2, Bansalan, Davao del Sur, from the national tax allotment, by Representative Cagas.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Bill 3911, providing for the Magna Carta of Barangay Employees, by Representative Kong Hun.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Bill number 3912, establishing an international ship port and appropriate facilities in Abra de Ilog, Occidental Mindoro, by Representative Tariela.
To the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill numbers 3913 and 3914, declaring Sagumata Falls at Barangay Lourdes and Mount Anahawan at Barangay Banlag, Valencia City, Bukidnon as ecotourism zones, by Representative
To
Roque.
the Committee on Tourism.
House Bill 3915, establishing the Teodora and Pepito Farmers Research and Medical Center in Valencia, Bukidnon, by Representatives Roque, Romualdez, Sierra Marie, and
To
Asidre.
the Committee on Health.
House Bill 3916, establishing a regular district office of the LTO in Gataran, 1st District of Cagayan, by Representative Nolasco.
To the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill 3917, amending Sections 3 and 4 of the Anti-Agricultural Smuggling Act of 2016, by Representatives Marcos and Nograles
To the Committee on
Margarita.
Agriculture and Food.
House Bill 3918, declaring a parcel of land located in San Francisco, Quezon, as a protected area with a category of protected landscape under the National Integrated Protected Area System to be referred to as the San Francisco Protected Landscape, by Representative
To the
Arrogancia.
Committee on Natural Resources.
House Bill 3919, declaring a parcel of land located in San Andres, Quezon, as a protected area with a category of protected landscape and seascape under the National Integrated Protected Area System to be referred to as the Alibihaban Protected Landscape and Seascape, by Representative
To the
Arrogancia.
Committee on Natural Resources.
House Bill 3920, lowering the optional retirement age of public school teachers from 60 years old to 55 years old, by Representative Arrogancia.
To the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization.
House Bill numbers 3921 and 3923, converting certain roads in Baguio City into national roads, by Representative Gomar.
To the Committee on Public Works and Highways.
House Bill 3922, establishing a community center for the differently abled in the city of Baguio, by Representative Gomar.
To the Special Committee on Persons with Disabilities.
House Bill 3924, establishing a senior wellness center in Baguio City, by Representative
To
Gomar.
the Special Committee on Senior Citizens.
House Bill 3925, suspending the implementation of the mother tongue-based multilingual education policy and mandating EDCOM 2 to conduct a comprehensive evaluation and assessment of the MTB-MLE policy, by Representative
To
Gomar.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 3926, establishing the Tika Elementary School in Tika, Bugasong, Antique, by Representative Ligarda.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill numbers 3927, 3929, 3933, 3936 to 3938 and 3941, converting certain elementary schools into integrated schools in certain municipalities of Antique, by Representative
To the
Ligarda.
Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill numbers 3928, 3930 to 3932, 3934, 3935, 3939, 3940, and 3942, establishing elementary schools in certain municipalities of Antique, by Representative
To
Ligarda.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 3943, professionalizing paralegal practice in the Philippines, creating a professional regulatory board of paralegals, by Representative
To
Maniquis.
the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
House Bill 3944, creating a Bangko Central Digital Peso as a medium of exchange or as money for use on all digital means, by Representative
To
Kua.
the Committee on Banks and Financial Intermediaries.
House Bill 3945, establishing a one-stop shop for priority infrastructure projects, by Representative Kua.
To the Committee on Public Works and Highways.
House Bill 3946, providing for the manner of election of the elective members of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan of Laguna representing the cities of San Pedro, Santa Rosa, and Binyan, by Representatives Fernandez, Alonte, and
To the
Matibag.
Committee on Suffrage and Electoral Reforms.
House Bill numbers 3947 and 3948, establishing an extension office of the LTO in Consolacion and Cordova, Cebu, by Representatives Lagon Daphne and Lagon
To
Sani.
the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill 3949, providing for a cash gift of 80,000 pesos to Filipino octogenarians, by Representatives Lagon Sani and Lagon Daphne.
To the Special Committee on Senior Citizens.
House Bill 3950, establishing the Visayas Kidney Institute in Cebu City, by Representatives Lagon Sani and Lagon
To the
Daphne.
Committee on Health.
House Bill 3951, declaring the month of January every year as Visayan Heritage Month, by Representatives Lagon Sani and Lagon
To
Daphne.
the Committee on Visayas Development.
House Bill 3952, establishing the Visayas School for the Arts in Cebu City, by Representatives Lagon Sani and Lagon
To
Daphne.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 3953, instituting the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, by Representative
To the
Morden.
Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs.
House Bill 3954, instituting reforms in real property valuation and assessment in the Philippines, reorganizing the Bureau of Local Government Finance, by Representative
To
Haresco.
the Committee on Government Reorganization.
House Bill 3955, instituting reforms in real property valuation and assessment in the Philippines, reorganizing the Bureau of Local Government Finance, by Representatives Duterte and Yap Eri.
To the Committee on Government Reorganization.
House Bill 3956, instituting a national land use policy, by Representatives Duterte, Yap Eri, Yap Edvic, and Soriano.
To the Special Committee on Land Use.
House Bill 3957, mandating the establishment of Kadiwa centers as agri-food terminals in every city and municipality, by Representative Lee.
To the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
House Bill 3958, providing post-harvest facilities to rice farmers, by Representative Lee.
To the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
House Bill 3959, mandating the establishment of composting facility in every barangay or cluster of barangays as a part of comprehensive solid waste management by Representative Amante.
To the Committee on Ecology.
House Bill 3960, amending Section 6 of the Charter of the Mactan-Cebu International Airport Authority by Representative Chan.
To the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization.
House Bill 3979, instituting a comprehensive program for the prevention, early detection, diagnosis, and treatment of persons with autism spectrum disorders by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 3980, requiring government agencies to indicate the blood type of individuals on their identification cards, certificates, and licenses by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 3981, recognizing the Boy Scouts of the Philippines as an independent, voluntary, autonomous, non-governmental organization, instituting its new charter by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization.
House Bill 3982, providing for the compulsory disclosure of fire safety standards and measures in campus buildings by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture and the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 3983, penalizing acts inimical to proper food handling and preparation requirements as provided by the Code of Sanitation of the Philippines for the purpose of increasing the penalty for violation thereof by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Health.
House Bill 3984, strengthening the regulatory system in the country to combat counterfeit pharmaceutical products, declaring the manufacture, importation, distribution, sale, or offer for sale or possession of counterfeit pharmaceutical products as an offense involving economic sabotage, providing for the prohibitions and penalties for violations, and revising the special law on counterfeit drugs by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Trade and Industry.
House Bill 3985, merging the Philippine Carabao Center, the National Dairy Authority, into the Philippine National Dairy Development Agency by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
House Bill 3986, creating a dental unit in every rural health unit under the DOH as part of the primary approach in the delivery of health services by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Health.
House Bill 3987, creating the Department of Climate Change by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Climate Change.
House Bill 3988, creating the Department of Economics and Development Planning by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Economic Affairs.
House Bill 3989, creating a Department of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Aquaculture and Fisheries Resources.
House Bill 3990, strengthening the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Servants by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
House Bill 3991, creating the Environmental Protection and Enforcement Bureau under the Department of Environment and Natural Resources by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Natural Resources.
House Bill 3992, protecting and promoting the rights to equality and non-discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, and religion by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Human Rights.
House Bill 3993, preventing the dangers of alcohol consumption in causing fetal alcohol syndrome in mothers by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 3994, institutionalizing the implementation of the government internship program by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
House Bill 3995, promoting integrated urban agriculture in urban areas nationwide to address food security by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Agriculture and Food and the Special Committee on Food Security.
House Bill 3996, to provide for the establishment of the Interactive Entertainment Rating Board by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Welfare of Children.
House Bill 3997, providing for mandatory insurance coverage and benefits for all line workers by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis Horebata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Energy.
House Bill 3998, establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in Limanan, Camarines Sur, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To the
Enciso.
Committee on Aquaculture and Fisheries Resources.
House Bill 3999, to manage medical residency training programs in the Philippines, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4000, establishing a national evaluation policy, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Economic Affairs.
House Bill 4001, institutionalizing a national psoriasis care program, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4002, providing for a new passport law by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Foreign Affairs.
House Bill 4003, lowering the compulsory and optional retirement age of public school teachers by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization.
House Bill 4004, providing for an opt-out system of organ and tissue donation, promoting the right to health by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4005, establishing the Philippine Blood Disease and Transfusion Center by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4006, establishing the Philippine Center for Diabetes and Endocrinology by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4007, establishing the National Crop Protection Program, creating the Philippine Crop Protection Agency by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
House Bill 4008, establishing the Philippine Health Security Council by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4009, regulating the practice of microbiology in the Philippines by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To the
Enciso.
Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
House Bill 4010, creating the Philippine Seaweed Development Authority by Representatives Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Aquaculture and Fisheries Resources.
House Bill numbers 4011 and 4018, establishing TESDA training and assessment centers in Poblacion and San Gabriel, Pamplona, Camarines Sur by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 4012, establishing the Police Law Enforcement Courts by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Justice.
House Bill 4013, to provide for health and work safety standards for professional boxers by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Games and Amusements.
House Bill 4014, further strengthening the government service insurance system by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization.
House Bill 4015, right-sizing the national government to improve public service delivery by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To the
Enciso.
Committee on Government Reorganization.
House Bill 4016, integrating basic road safety and comprehensive driver's education in the curriculum of the K-12 program by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 4017, establishing a competitive grant program to retain highly qualified teachers in rural communities by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To the
Enciso.
Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 4019, mandating the institutionalization, development, training, organization, and administration of ROTC in grades 11 and 12 in public and private educational institutions by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture and the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 4020, incorporating the value of responsible, fair, and truthful usage and enjoyment of social media in schools and universities by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To the
Enciso.
Committee on Basic Education and Culture and the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 4021, establishing the Camarines Sur Integrated School for Special Children in Limbanan, Camarines Sur by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To the
Enciso.
Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 4022, Intensifying Stem Cell Research and Therapy in the Philippines, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4023, Providing for the Sustainable Management of Forests and Forest Lands, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Natural Resources.
House Bill 4024, Promoting Teacher Health and Wellness by requiring the DOH to carry out a study to add to the scientific knowledge on reducing teacher stress and increasing teacher retention and well-being, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4025, Institutionalizing the Lifelong Learning Development Framework, creating a Lifelong Learning Development Council, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Higher and Technical Education and the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 4026, Regulating Class Size in All Public Schools, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To
Enciso.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 4027, Prohibiting preschools and elementary schools from mandating graduating pupils to wear a toga during graduation rites, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and
To the
Enciso.
Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 4028, Promoting Workers' Health and Wellness by providing incentives to employers for the implementation of workforce wellness and workplace improvement programs, by Representatives Villaferte Luis Raymond, Villaferte Miguel Luis, Horibata, and Enciso.
To the Committee on Labor and Employment.
House Bill 4029, Subdividing Barangay Bagong Silang, Caloocan City into 7 distinct, separate, and independent barangays to be known as Barangay 176A, Barangay 176B, Barangay 176C, Barangay 176D, Barangay 176E, Barangay 176F, and Barangay 176G, by Representative
To the
Malapitan.
Committee on Local Government.
House Bill 4037, Regulating the Manufacturing, Importation, and Use of Single-Use Plastic Products and providing penalties, levies, and an incentive systems for industries, business enterprises, and consumers thereof, by Representative
To the
Morden.
Committee on Ecology.
House Bill 4038, Providing all provincial schools, provincial hospitals with complete dialysis treatment machines and providing free dialysis treatments to indigent patients, by Representative
To the
Sakaluran.
Committee on Health.
House Bill 4039, Granting benefits and incentives to accredited barangay nutrition scholars, by Representative
To the
Agaraw.
Committee on Local Government.
House Bill 4040, Prescribing a code of conduct for demolition and eviction of homeless and underprivileged citizens, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Housing and Urban Development.
House Bill 4041, Recognizing the role of the members of the Career Executive Service in effectively upholding, pursuing, and maintaining good governance and accountability in public service by granting them salaries, special allowances, retirement benefits, and privileges commensurate to their CES ranks, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
House Bill 4042, Integrating Computer Science in the curriculum of the K-12 program, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill numbers 4043 and 4056, Creating the Department of Disaster Resilience, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Disaster Resilience.
House Bill 4044, Providing for stricter enforcement in the construction, installation, and maintenance of public safety signages, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Public Works and Highways.
House Bill 4045, Granting continuing COVID-19 benefits to public and private health workers during the period of the pandemic, by Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4046, Making the position of a cooperatives officer mandatory at the municipal, city, and provincial levels, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Cooperatives Development.
House Bill 4047, Creating the Commission on Immigration, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Justice.
House Bill 4048, Institutionalizing the Creation of the Plastic Bag Recycling Act of 2022, by Representative
To the
Tambunting.
Committee on Ecology.
House Bill 4049, Establishing a credit assistance program for PWDs, by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Special Committee on Persons with Disabilities.
House Bill 4050, Defining the Crime of Deprivation of Support to Elderly and Indigent Parents, by Representative
To the
Tambunting.
Committee on Justice.
House Bill 4051, Establishing a Crisis Center for Street Children in every region of the Philippines, by Representative
To the
Tambunting.
Committee on Welfare of Children.
House Bill 4052, Creating a Special Court to be known as Dangerous Drugs Court by Representative
to
Tambutning.
the Committee on Justice,
House Bill 4053, facilitating the administration of justice by strengthening the fraud detection, prevention, and elimination capability of the government by creating a Philippine Death Check Register and online death verification system under the Philippine Statistics Authority by Representative
to the
Tambunting.
Committee on Justice,
House Bill 4054, amending the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004, defines electronic violence against women by Representative
to the
Tambunting.
Committee on Women and Gender Equality,
House Bill 4055, establishing the Department of Culture by Representative
to the
Tambunting.
Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Basic Education and Culture,
House Bill 4057, creating the Department of Water, Irrigation, Sewage, and Sanitation Resource Management by Representative
to the
Tambunting.
Committee on Government Reorganization and the Committee on Public Works and Highways,
House Bill 4058, providing stiffer penalties for robbery, theft, and destruction of public property by Representative Tambunting.
to the Committee on Revision of Laws,
House Bill 4059, prohibiting the holding or detention of human remains or cadavers by hospitals, clinics, morgues, and funeral parlors for non-payment of hospital, medical bills, and funeral expenses by Representative Tambunting.
to the Committee on Health,
House Bill 4060, to amend Section 2 of the Secrecy of Bank Deposits Law, exempting government officials and employees from the prohibition against disclosure of or inquiry into deposits with any banking institution by Representative Atayde.
Committee on Banks and Financial Intermediaries,
House Bill 4061, penalizing any person providing or possessing contraband and those who shall aid or abet the introduction of the same inside any prison facility administered by the Department of Justice by Representative Atayde.
to the Committee on Justice,
House Bill 4062, establishing a framework for film and television tourism in the Philippines, creating an interagency committee on film and television tourism by Representative
to
Atayde.
the Special Committee on Creative Industry and Performing Arts,
House Bill 4063, establishing the Science for Change program by Representative
to
Atayde.
the Committee on Science and Technology,
House Bill 4064, creating the Center for Disease Control and Prevention by Representative Atayde.
to the Committee on Health,
House Bill 4065, providing for the Magna Carta of the out-of-school youth by Representative Atayde.
to the Committee on Health,
House Bill 4066, standardizing the salaries and benefits of barangay officials by Representative Atayde.
to the Committee on Local Government,
House Bill 4067, granting additional benefits to Filipino centenarians, recognizing octogenarians and nonagenarians by Representative Vargas.
to the Special Committee on Senior Citizens,
House Bill 4068, giving priority to retired teachers in the availment of government services and public utilities by Representative Vargas.
to the Committee on Basic Education and Culture,
House Bill 4069, lowering the optional retirement age of public school teachers from 60 years old to 55 years old by Representative Vargas.
to the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization,
House Bill 4070, upgrading the minimum salary grade level of teachers from salary grade 11 to 19 by Representative
to
Vargas.
the Committee on Appropriations,
House Bill 4071, establishing a comprehensive training program for teachers of children with disability by Representative
to
Vargas.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture,
House Bill 4072, institutionalizing the grant of a teacher supplies allowance for public school teachers by Representative
to
Vargas.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture,
House Bill 4073, providing incentives to public school teachers who are assigned to outside of their cities, municipalities, and provinces by Representative
to
Vargas.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture,
House Bill 4074, providing a health care program for public school teachers by Representative
to
Vargas.
the Committee on Health,
House Bill 4075, to provide a housing program for teachers by Representative Vargas.
to the Committee on Housing and Urban Development,
House Bill 4076, creating plantilla positions in the DepEd for volunteer teachers with at least 5 years of continuous service in the public school system by Representative
to the
Vargas.
Committee on Appropriations,
House Bill 4077, establishing the Foreign Service Retirement Program under the Government Service Insurance System by Representative Libanan.
to the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization,
House Bill 4078, providing for rank structure upgrade and reclassification in the Bureau of Fire Protection and the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology by Representative Mariano
to the
Hernandez.
Committee on Public Order and Safety,
House Bill 4079, converting the State College of the City of San Fernando, Pampanga, and integrating it as a regular campus of the Don Honorio Ventura State University by Representative Gonzales Aurelio.
to the Committee on Higher and Technical Education,
House Bill 4080, converting the J.H. Cerillas State College in Mati, San Miguel, Zamboanga del Sur into Zamboanga del Sur State University by Representatives U. Jazel and U. Divina.
to the Committee on Higher and Technical Education,
House Bill 4081, instituting a national land use and management policy by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Special Committee on Land Use.
House Bill 4082, providing for the national defense and security of the Republic of the Philippines by Representative
To the
Tambunting.
Committee on National Defense and Security.
House Bill 4083, mandating the institutionalization, development, training, organization, and administration of ROTC in grades 11 and 12 in public and private educational institutions by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Basic Education and Culture and the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 4084, establishing a sustainable retirement and pension system by amending pertinent laws on the retirement benefits and pension of the uniformed personnel of the uniformed services
To the
by
Committee-
Representative Tambunting.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security and the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
House Bill 4085, establishing National Disease Management Prevention Authority by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Health.
House Bill 4086, right-sizing the national government to improve public service delivery by Representative
To
Tambunting.
the Committee on Government Reorganization.
House Bill 4087, establishing an on-site, in-city, or near-city local government resettlement program for informal settler families in accordance with the People's Plan by Representatives Brosas, Castro Franz, and Manuel.
To the Committee on Housing and Urban Development.
Resolutions. House Resolution 294, directing the Committee on Foreign Affairs to conduct an inquiry into the additional costs passed on to overseas Filipinos for the renewal of Philippine passports by Representative
To
Recto.
the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 295, directing the Committee on Transportation to conduct an inquiry on the status of the comprehensive traffic programs to the government by Representative
To
Recto.
the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 296, congratulating and commending veteran broadcast journalist Ms. Maria Jessica Aspira Soho for winning the Top Media Publisher category in the TikTok Awards Philippines 2022 held in the New Frontier Theater on August 20, 2022 by Representative Gomez.
To the Committee on Public Information.
House Resolution 297, congratulating and commending Negros Occidental Little League for winning the Team Sportsmanship Award in the 2022 Little League Softball World Series held in North Carolina on August 9 to 15, 2022 by Representative Gomez.
To the Committee on Youth and Sports Development.
House Resolution 298, congratulating and commending Princess Mary Superal for winning the Simon Asia Pacific Cup 2022 held in Indonesia on August 15 to 20, 2022 by Representative
To
Gomez.
the Committee on Youth and Sports Development.
House Resolution 299, urging the DILG to conduct an investigation into the hazing-related death of Patrolman J.C. de Guzman Ramores and for the CHED, DepEd, and National Youth Commission to coordinate with schools and universities in order to conduct information, education, and communication campaigns to warn Filipino youth on the dangers of hazing and to orient them on the pertinent provisions of the Anti-Hazing Act of 2018 by Representative
To
Abante.
the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 300, urging all LGUs to fully implement the provisions of the Barangay Health Workers Benefits and Incentives Act of 1995 and directing the DILG and DOH to strictly monitor its implementation and submit regular reports and recommendations to Congress by Representative
To the
Agarao.
Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 301, directing the Committee on Human Rights to conduct an inquiry on the violent dispersal, intimidation, harassment, and physical assault perpetrated by the PNP from Batasan Police Station 6 against child rights advocates during the Balik Eskwela relief distribution in President Corazon Aquino Elementary School in Batasan Road, Quezon City by Representatives Brosas, Castro Franz, and Manuel.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 302, congratulating and commending the Filipino athletes with disabilities who won medals for the Philippines in the 11th ASEAN Para Games held in Indonesia last July 30 to August 6, 2022 by Representative Tolentino.
To the Committee on Youth and Sports Development.
House Resolution 303, directing the Special Committee on Persons with Disabilities to conduct an inquiry on the status and implementation of the Philippine Registry of Persons with Disability in accordance with Republic Act No. 11228 by Representative
To
Vargas.
the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 304, directing the Committee on Energy to investigate the power supply crisis in the municipalities of Calamansig and Lebac, Sultan Kudarat by Representative Swansing Horacio.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 305, expressing grave concern over the deportation of Migrante Canada chairperson Danilo De Leon from Alberta, Canada, and urging the Philippine government to ensure his safety and security once he arrives in the country by Representatives Brosas, Castro Franz, and Manuel.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 306, strongly urging the National Electrification Administration to continue the deferment of regular district elections of all electric cooperatives nationwide for the third and last quarters of 2022 and year 2023, including annual General Membership Assembly by Representative
To
Romualdo.
the Committee on Energy.
House Resolution 307, strongly urging the appropriate committee to conduct an inquiry on the alarming rise in the price of airfares being collected by various airline companies for local leisure destinations and other domestic routes, by Representative Singson Ronald.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 308, commending and congratulating PMS Rogelio A. Rodriguez Jr., a native of the city of Pasig, as one of the 2022 outstanding Filipinos of the Metrobank Foundation, Incorporated, by Representative Romulo.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 309, honoring and commending the 2022 outstanding Filipinos of the Metrobank Foundation, Incorporated, by Representative Romulo.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 310, urging the Committee on Information and Communications Technology to conduct an inquiry into the status of rollout and expansion of service to provide better internet connectivity, speed, and bandwidth capacity by internet service providers to customers in the entire country, especially in remote provinces in the Visayas and Mindanao regions, by Representative Defensor.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 311, directing the Committee on Ways and Means and other appropriate committees to conduct an inquiry on the smuggling of basic commodities and tobacco, and to propose remedial measures thereof, by Representatives Swansing Horacio and Swansing Micaela Angela.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 312, directing the Committee on Energy to conduct an inquiry on the Energy Regulatory Commission's rate-setting functions in accordance with the mandate prescribed under EPIRA, and recommend measures to ensure fair returns to power industry players at the lowest possible retail rates to electricity consumers, by Representatives Marcoleta and
To the
Tanchay.
Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 313, directing the appropriate committees to conduct an inquiry into the purposes that universal banks currently pursue or engage in, particularly activities that are outside the core of banking business, thereby stifling fair competition in the industry, by Representatives Marcoleta and
To the
Tanchay.
Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 314, mandating the appropriate committees to inquire on the authenticity of the land title of ABS-CBN Corporation in the light of the policy recommendation of the TWG as a consequence of the decision taken by the Committee on Legislative Franchises on the franchise application of ABS-CBN Corporation, by Representative Marcoleta.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 315, mandating the electronic dissemination and transmission of various legislative, administrative, communications, and other forms of documents and data as the primary and default mode of sending and receiving documents in the House of Representatives, by Representative
To
Villanueva.
the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 316, mandating the provision of Filipino Sign Language insets in all function and events of the House being live-streamed online or broadcasted via television, by Representative Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 317, congratulating Ernest Jan E.J. Uy Obiana for winning the gold medals in the 26th Internationales Stabhachung meeting held in Jockgrim, Germany, and in the True Athletes Classics 2022 in Leverkusen, Germany, by Representatives Romualdez Ferdinand Martin, Dalipe, Marcos, Libanan, Romualdez Yada Marie, and Asidre.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Joint Resolution Number 8, expanding the mandate of the Legislative Oversight Committee to monitor and oversee the implementation of the Visiting Forces Agreement with the USA, to include other defense and status of forces agreements with other countries concurred with by the Senate, by Representative
To
Arenas.
the Committee on Foreign Affairs.
Communications. Letter dated June 21, 2022, the National Anti-Poverty Commission, Secretary, Lead Convener, submitting to the House of Representatives a copy of their accomplishment report for the calendar year 2021.
To the Committee on Poverty Alleviation.
Letters dated June 21 and 28, 2022 of the COA Acting Chairperson, furnishing the House with copies of their annual audit reports for the years ending December 31st, 2020 and 2021 on certain government corporations, and a copy of their consolidated audit report on official development assistance funded programs and projects for the calendar year 2021.
To the Committee on Public Accounts.
Letters from certain local chief executives transmitting to the House copies of their reports on fund utilization and status of program project activity implementation relative to the local government support fund for certain months of 2022.
To the Committee on Appropriations.
Letter dated June 29, 2022 of the NEDA Socioeconomic Planning Secretary, submitting to the House a copy of their calendar year 2021 Official Development Assistance Portfolio Review Report.
To the Committee on Economic Affairs.
Letter dated June 30, 2022 of the COBA Regional Director, Regional Office Number 3, furnishing the House copies of their financial audit reports on certain water districts in Region 3.
To the Committee on Public Accounts.
Letters dated July 1, 6, 11, 20, and 2022 of the Acting Deputy Director and Deputy Director respectively of the BSP Office of the General Counsel and Legal Services transmitting to the House duly certified copies of certain BSP issuances.
To the Committee on Banks and Financial Intermediaries.
Letter dated July 7, 2022 of the NGCP President and CEO submitting to the House a copy of their corporate performance highlights for the calendar year
To
2021.
the Committee on Energy.
Letter dated July 12, 2022 of the COA Chairperson furnishing the House copies of their consolidated and individual annual audit reports for the year ending December 31, 2021 on certain government agencies.
To the Committee on Public Accounts.
Letter dated July 14, 2022 of the CESB Executive Director submitting to the House a copy of their quarterly physical report of operation as of June 30, 2022, which was posted on their website under the Transparency Seal page.
To the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
Annual audit reports for the year ending December 31, 2021 on certain water districts in Region 4-A and Region 9.
To the Committee on Public Accounts.
Annual audit reports for the year ending December 31, 2021 on certain water districts in Lanao del Norte.
To the Committee on Public Accounts.
Bureau of Customs Accomplishment Report for 2016 to 2022 entitled Duterte Legacy.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
Annual audit reports on the Tarlac Agricultural University, Camiling, Tarlac, on the Tarlac State University, Tarlac City, and on the Central Luzon State University Science City of Muñoz, Nueva Ecija, for the year ending December 31,
To
2021.
the Committee on Public Accounts.
Annual audit report on the Aurora Pacific Economic Zone and Freeport Authority, Kasiguran, Province of Aurora, for the year ending December 31,
To
2021.
the Committee on Public Accounts.
Committee reports. Report numbers 24, 25, and 26 submitted by the Committee on Ways and Means on House Bill numbers 4102, 4122, and 4125, respectively.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, today being with leave of the House, I move that we open the privilege hour.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. The motion is approved and the Chair declares a privilege hour. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we move that Representative Christopher De Venecia of the 4th District of Pangasinan be given the privilege for the privilege hour to talk on culture, arts, and creative industries. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 4th District of Pangasinan, the Honorable Christopher V.P. De Venecia, is recognized for his privileged speech.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, dear colleagues, masantosya ngaram at sikay namin. Greetings in creativity. I stand here today advocating what I have been saying in many fora for the past 2-3 years, that there is huge value and socioeconomic impact to be derived from the creative industries, and that hashtag the future is creative. Our government now has the opportunity to give not merely ceremonial honors to the sector or ride on every self-initiated success story in the field, but genuine attention and substantive support to help propel it to its fullest potential. With the recent enactment of RA 11904, or the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act, I'm thrilled and excited for this new growth frontier in the coming years, which, according to last Friday's budget hearing, will enjoy its own chapter in the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028. I'm equally thrilled by the special mention of President BBM of galvanizing creative industry and tourism towards crafting a strategic country brand in his first State of the Nation address. I'm inviting all of you, dear colleagues, to onboard into this exciting and worthwhile advocacy and adventure. With this landmark law, I'm thrilled to say that the Philippines has decided to make creativity a cornerstone not just of our country's post-pandemic economic recovery, but also our development well beyond it. We reinforced in the highest regard our recognition of the limitless social, cultural, and economic promise of our country's creative industries. Official data shows that in 2019, the estimate is that the sector comprises 4.8 million creative Filipinos, or 11.3% of total employment, the critical mass of which is, of course, in the freelance industry. It has historically registered a 12% annual growth rate as per the Census of Philippine Business and Industry, or the CPBI. Per the WIPO and IPOPhil study conducted in 2014, the copyright-based industries, which are synonymous to creative industries, contributed 7.34% to GDP. 30.5% of total establishments are actually in the creative sector as of 2019. It had a 7.12% value add of covered establishments as of 2018. And it has been estimated to have reduced youth poverty by 14.7% in 2018, as jobs in the creative sector are varied, diverse, and more accessible to youth and to women, according to UNESCO. This law will provide new opportunities for our creative enterprises, firms, MSMEs, businesses, and even individual stakeholders who are part of trade organizations and workers' organizations in the hopes of building a new creative powerhouse not only in ASEAN, but the entire world. The goals set by DTI and the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines, which is a private NGO, is for the Philippines to become the #1 creative economy in ASEAN by the year 2030. And sure, it's lofty, it's ambitious, but it's certainly doable, as the law mandates the creation of a development plan in the short, medium, and long term across key performance indicators, among which include revenue, job generation, GDP contribution, value creation, market development and expansion, both domestically and overseas, export, and of course, the creation of Filipino intellectual property towards an IP ecology. So if we are confused as to the inception of IP ecology, just think Marvel Cinematic Universe. It starts out as a comic book, but when you harness the IP ecology, it becomes something like an MCU with films, TV shows in Disney+, merchandise, theme parks, and many others. Per a 2018 UNCTAD census, the Philippines is #1 in the export of creative services and #5 in the export of creative goods within ASEAN. The creative industry law will identify pain points in local, regional, and national value chains so that they can be addressed to allow the creative sector to flourish. For this, I am forever grateful to our colleagues in the Arts, Culture, and Creative Industries block of the 18th Congress for being the ones who fueled this inextinguishable flame in pushing for the creative industries towards a creative economy, for affixing their signatures in more than 50 resolutions filed, in the letters of communication to the economic managers, for budgetary support for our creative arts agencies, and for participating in our long, and I mean long, committee hearings, the record for which was, I believe, 8.5 to 9 hours. Mr. Speaker and dear colleagues, I know that we have miles to go in terms of realizing our creative future. But there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Hot on the heels of last Sunday's launch of Vogue Philippines in the print media domain, last week's launch of Drag Race Philippines in the audiovisual domain, and of course the forthcoming opening of Silver Lens Gallery in Soho, New York, in the visual arts domain, and many other successes globally and domestically, it is more than enough that we keep the fire burning by standing and advocating for the creative industries within these halls. This is why today I am inviting the members of the House to join us in Achieve, an informal block of legislators and advocates, not to be confused with a special committee on creative industry, because of course there's a limit to membership in the special committee. But Achieve is an informal block that serves as a complement to the committee in advocating for these goals. I thank our beloved Speaker Ferdinand Martin Romualdez for the trust, of of course, that he and the House leadership had conferred to us once again in steering the Creative Industry Committee in the 19th Congress. So Achieve was already in the works as early as 2019. It was November when we first convened, and I personally reached out to a few of our colleagues in the 18th Congress to rally support for the sector. What started out as a ragtag team of 16 legislators in a small room grew to become 65 members through teleconferencing and intensified lobbying, which then included over 20 committee chairpersons, more than 12 deputy speakers, and even former Speaker Lord Alan Velasco. Through legislation and dialogue and our six-pronged agenda, Achieved envisioned a vibrant creative economy where the creative arts, science and technology, business, and even non-creative industries synergize towards nation building. The pandemic forced us to reflect on the role and contribution of the creative sector to our economy and to our society. With live events being canceled, cinemas being shuttered, creative spaces closing altogether, and the industry being written off as then non-essential, the issues of creative workers and creative firms were brought to the limelight. The economic damage that most industries incurred was in fact very much severe. The National Live Events Coalition, PH, through an internal survey of their 40,000 member MSMEs and 2 large enterprises, estimated economic loss in 2020 amounting to over 130 billion pesos, or less than 1% of GDP, most of which coming from the wedding and socials subsector. Though it's interesting to note that tech-driven creative industries such as software and game development, and even those in creative services like communication or graphic design, experienced an upswing. While Achieve patiently met with each sector, as well as government agencies that were siloed in their response, we enjoyed a partnership and trust with stakeholders, as well as a multitude of perspectives within the bloc itself on how to approach the sector policy-wise. A mix of brilliant economists like Congresswoman Stella Quimbo, Congresswoman Sharon Garin, and Congressman Joey Salceda, film icons like Congresswoman Vilma Santos Recto, academic stalwarts turned policymakers like Congressman Kiko Benitez, lifestyle icons like Congresswoman Lucy Torres Gomez, legal luminaries like Congressman Rufus Rodriguez, cultural stalwarts like now Senator Lauren Legarda, and many others who brought their own verve and perspectives into the mix. This much was true. We all wanted our creative industries to succeed and bounce back better from the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, dear colleagues, before the enactment of RA 11904, the creative industries in the Philippines have always lacked the necessary institutional support to flourish. With the recent adverse effects of the pandemic on our creative sector, it was high time that our legislators recognized their value not just through the passage of the landmark law, but also a continued sense of support through policymaking and legislative oversight to keep us on track towards a 2030 goal, hence the convening of Achieve. Again, to clarify, Achieve is different from the Special Committee, which was an institutionalized platform in which to discuss and pass vital legislation for the creative sector. The Special Committee was created during the time of former Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano and propelled further by former Speaker Lord Alan Velasco. Instead, Achieve is an informal bloc of legislators which has become a crucial lobbying arm and support mechanism to the committee. But we didn't want this to be a hindrance to onboarding more policymakers to the creative agenda. So allow me to discuss with you Achieve's 6-point agenda or strategy. First is bills. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yan, bills. Of course, our first objective is to file bills as a bloc. That goes without saying that our main mandate as members of Congress is to propose measures that would help improve the lives of our constituents and the Filipino people. To this end, Achieve has filed a number of bills in the 18th Congress, highlighted, of course, by the recent passage of the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act. Second, resolutions. The ACHIEB has been consistent in filing resolutions to celebrate global achievements and milestones in the creative sector, as well as expressing the sense of the House in offering profound condolences and honoring the legacies of creatives who have left us in this world. We pause for a moment of silence to honor our film stalwart, Sherry Hill, and veteran cartoonist, Rene Aranda. Mr. Speaker and dear colleagues, ACHIEB believes that filing resolutions empowers our stakeholders, gives them an institutional standing ovation for a job well done in representing the country, and honors legacies that should be immortalized in the annals of our history. You see a photo there in the slide. Can we go back one slide? Those are the chefs behind Kasama. So that's the first Filipino restaurant that achieved a Michelin star in the United States. So hopefully we can also have Michelin star restaurants here in the Philippines, but that requires strong institutional support from the Department of Tourism. All right, next, budgetary support. ACHIEB has lobbied extensively during budget seasons past for more appropriate funding for government agencies dabbling in the creative arts to help them be of better service to our stakeholders. In our efforts to capacitate creativity and put our money where our heart is, we learned more about our lesser-known partners in the executive branch and how they impact productivity in the creative sector. So within DOST in the upper left corner, there's the Forest Products Research Development Institute, there's the Philippine Textile Research Institute, the National Research Council of the Philippines, and the Philippine Council for Industry, Energy, and Emerging Technology Research and Development, or PSEERD, among others. Of course, within the DA, there's the Philippine Fiber Development Authority, which helps develop our abaca industry. Within the DOT, there's Intramuros Administration, the National Parks Development Committee, the Nayong Pilipino, among many others. Within DTI, there on the middle left corner, there's a Design Center of the Philippines, the Center for International Trade, Expositions and Missions, or CITEM, which organizes the yearly Manila Fame, the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, and the soon-to-be-created Philippine Creative Industries Development Council. Within DFA, there's the UNESCO National Commission, which is in charge of endorsing biannual city applications to the prestigious UNESCO Creative Cities Network. Within DepEd, there's the National Book Development Board, which is in charge of the book publishing industry, the Philippine High School for the Arts, the National Council for Children's Television, and budgetarily, the National Museum. Of course, there's the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and the 6 cultural agencies attached to it, including the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Within the DSWD, there's the National Commission on Indigenous People. And under the Office of the President, you have the likes of the Film Development Council of the Philippines, among many others. ACHIEB lobbies as a bloc in the next 3 budget cycles for appropriate funding for these cultural and creative agencies. As a bloc, we will be highly supportive of our agencies that help develop the creative sector, and we will do our best to make sure their programs are properly funded given the limited resources. We will also make sure that the budgets extended to these agencies are utilized as provided for in our General Appropriations Act and ensure that there's budget accountability in all levels. Now let's go to the 4th agenda item of ACHIEB, oversight. It is important that we make sure that existing laws pertaining to the creative industries are properly implemented and are fully responsive to the rapidly changing socioeconomic landscape. From the Philippine Design Competitiveness Act of 2013, the Intellectual Property Code that is overdue for revision, the Philippine Innovation Act, the Innovative Startup Act, the Philippine Tropical Fabric Law, and among many others, the Philippine Creative Industry Development Act, which has now begun the process of crafting the IRR. Through inquiries in aid of legislation and even informal teleconferencing with our government partners, we will continue to ensure that we are on track towards our 2030 goal, again, that is to become the #1 creative economy in all of ASEAN. The fifth agenda item is collaboration. Of course, we can't be advocates for creativity if we do not collaborate, because collaboration is sort of the bedrock of creativity. So through our meetings, Achieve helps identify intersectionalities across agencies which had historically been siloed in their support to the sector. Inspired by an inquiry we conducted in aid of legislation on the impact of the UNESCO Creative Cities Network to cities like Baguio in craft and folk art and Cebu for design, Achieve partnered with the League of Cities and the private sector for the creation of the Philippine Creative Cities Network. We thank the Design Center and the Design Council for helping us create the logo for the Philippine Creative Cities Network. Like how Achieve functions as a complement to the special committee, we didn't want non-membership to the UNESCO to be a hindrance for our 146 cities across the Philippines to galvanize creativity for their socio-economic agenda. So the PCCN serves as an incubator for cities that want to learn how to use creativity, want to be able to take stock of their creative assets and resources, to be able to galvanize it for their own socio-economic agenda, as well as an accelerator for cities that are already doing that are already creative, and just need a little bit of a push to be able to make a successful bid to the UNESCO Creative Cities Network. It is a program that, while pro bono and volunteer-driven before, is now institutionalized through the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act. We thank our we have a video. Let's play it. Kong Richard, you are in this video.
Creativity nahanap kahit saan, every day, at nasa loob nating lahat.
Creativity is manifested in many ways, and creative skills are essential in numerous industries.
Every Filipino must understand the significance of creativity in our daily lives.
Creativity is the root of all progress, innovation, and development. Let's systematize the creative agenda now.
Kailangan ng creativity ang ganap na inklusividad at kooperasyon sa pamamagitan ng isang mapagtangkilik na kaligayahan.
Creativity is the ultimate sustainable resource, needing platforms to facilitate innovative, impactful, and sustainable collaboration.
The creative agenda must be institutionalized at all levels of policy, formulation, and decision-making.
Creativity allows us to create the cities of tomorrow by being inventive, innovative, and by identifying it as a strategic factor for sustainable urban development.
Para crear una ciudad creativa debe poner con la creatividad y industria cultural na centro del plano de desarrollo del mga gobyerno lokal.
Magtinguha kita nga mag-uswag pagid ang Philippine LGUs para nga malampot naton ang UNESCO Creative Cities Network status.
So we thank our 41 member cities who expressed their interest and willingness to be part of this program and signed on to the Philippine Creative Cities Manifesto. So allow me to read the 41 cities. So there's Angeles, Antipolo City, Bacolod, Bago, Baguio, Bais, Balanga, Batangas City, Bayugan and Agusan del Sur, Binyan, Borongan, Butuan, Calapan, Candon, Canlaon, Cebu City, Dagupan City, Dapitan, Dipolog, Iligan, Iloilo City, Legazpi, Mandaluyong, Marawi, Masbate, Muntinlupa, Ormoc, Oroquieta, Puerto Princesa, Quezon City, Sagay, San Carlos City, San Fernando, Santiago, Sipalay, Sorsogon City, Tagaytay, Tuguegarao, Victorias, Vigan, and Zamboanga City. We do hope that through your working relationships with your respective city mayors, the PCCN can secure a renewed commitment to the creative agenda. We also thank our PCCN ambassadors who participated in this advocacy video. Of course, you saw our national artist for film, Tatay Kidlat Tahimik, Kenneth Cobonpue for design, Lea Salonga for music, Margarita Forres for gastronomy, Carlo Ople for media arts, former Deputy Speaker Vilma Santos Recto for film, and Virgilio Almario for literature. We also thank former League of Cities President Mayor Bing Leonardia, former Mayor and now Congressman Richard Gomez, and former Mayor Ben Climaco for their support, and look forward to working with the new LCP Chairman, Albi Benitez, as well as LCP President Mayor Mike Rama, and the LCP Secretariat to bolster membership in the PCCN. During the final State of the Nation address of President Duterte during the 18th Congress, the hashtag Futures Creative campaign was launched by ACHIB in partnership with the Communication Design Association of the Philippines, the trade organization for graphic design in the country. We partnered with CDAP President and Team Manila proprietor Joey Alviar, who was inspired by the rich heritage of weaving in the country, as well as our diverse cultural backgrounds as a people, to come up with pins that were donned by our members and congressional cohorts, as well as senators and department secretaries. This went viral and was well covered by our media partners, an effort that helped give our creative advocacy the public push that it so needed then. The year before, July 2020, ACHIB partnered with the Association of Women Legislators Foundation, the Congressional Spouses Foundation, and the Philippine Fashion Coalition to create the Arrow brooch that was worn by our female colleagues to help raise awareness on the plight of the fashion industry during the pandemic's early days. Proceeds from the sale of the Arrow brooch went to cash aid for displaced fashion industry workers. Through a strategic partnership with the National Research Council of the Philippines, again attached to the DOST, we were also able to begin a road mapping initiative for the music industry through a project called Musica Pilipinas. We thank Dr. Gregorio del Pilar, a descendant of one of our national heroes, Gregorio del Pilar, and his cohorts for providing the music industry through ACHIB with his grant and for its continuous commitment to completing the study. This roadmap is one of several initiatives, industry road mapping being a salient provision of the Philippine Creative Industry Development Act in synergy with road mapping initiatives by DTI, NCCA, the Film Development Council of the Philippines, the Design Center, and the National Book Development Board, all of which are in the process of being completed or published. ACHIB also provides support to the 2020 version of Cebu Design Week and last year's Creative Futures Conference, where we sponsored a content creation workshop by Filipino comic book artist Wills Protasio. So that's him on the slide. He is one of the founders of Image Comics, and he is known to be the creator of the character of Bishop in the X-Men. And he's a Filipino. We thank former Speaker, again, Lord Alan Velasco's immense contribution to this past initiative. The last 6-point agenda item of ACHIB is info dissemination. While ACHIB endeavored to hear out the concerns of our creative stakeholders, we also used our hearings as a platform to make our stakeholders aware of institutional support and protections that can be extended to the stakeholders. To strengthen our reach, we expanded our network and pivoted to social media so that the general public can be kept abreast of our activities. With Sitem and Viber Philippines, we created a one-stop shop Viber community called Create Philippines, which has to date 1,661 members. This platform allows our creatives to showcase and disseminate information about their creative products and services. So I urge all the congresswomen who are here in this plenary, if you have creative communities in your district, if you have exhibits that you want to promote, if you have conferences, seminars, fashion designers, gastronomy, restaurants, anything you want to promote, please use this platform and you can advertise to everybody who subscribed to it. It's nowhere near the platform of DOH, which has millions of members, but hopefully we will get there as we mainstream the creative agenda. So again, it's Create Philippines, and you can just scan the QR code to join this Viber community. We also collaborated with the Design Center of the Philippines to help promulgate participation in Design Counts, which is a mapping initiative to estimate the value of our design economy. So obviously, if there are autops in your district, if there are peanut brittles, if there are cassava chips, obviously it uses packaging, and packaging is part of design. So design as a creative industry also penetrates the non-creative industries in manufacturing and agriculture and many others. So this project was undertaken to be able to estimate the entire value of design in our overall economy. And finally, we teamed up with Tayo Philippines, a creative consultancy firm, to generate the beautiful content on our social media pages, both on Facebook and Instagram. We wanted to make sure that everything in the pages are design forward, bite-sized for the social media generation, and palatable to the general public. So I invite everyone to please follow and like these pages to see what Achieve has been up to in the past 2 years. The reformation of Achieve in the 19th Congress is one step towards the realization of that goal. With the help and cooperation of all of its members, the possibilities of what the bloc can contribute to cultivating the creative industries are truly limitless. So with this, Mr. Speaker, dear colleagues, I humbly ask everyone in this chamber to help us spread the word about RA 11904, or the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act, to your respective creative communities in your district. Once the law is being implemented as early as next year, I hope that your creatives in your district can benefit from all the programs, all the services encoded, encapsulated in the law. To get to know better who the creatives are, you can just research the law, the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act, because there are over 50 creative industries that are included within this ecosystem. So kung meron po kayong mga nag-organize ng mga live events, visual artists, meron kayong mga musikero, meron kayong mga chef, meron kayong mga fashion designer, furniture maker, meron kayong mga software developer, game developer, animator, mananayaw, opera singer, comic book artist, writer, editor, marami pang iba, you all qualify for the incentives in this law. All right? So I really hope that you can encourage your creatives in your district to get to know the law better para they can avail of the incentives in the law. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, creativity has always been very special to me, considering my background in the performing arts, television and film when I was younger, and of course print media, having been a columnist for Philippine Star for 13 years and an editor for the youth section. And I'm sure that I'm not alone here today, as many of our colleagues here come from the creative industry sector prior to joining government and are probably still working in the creative industry sector. Sometimes we just don't realize it. So we have a video that we're going to play before we conclude.
I've been working on filing bills for the creative sectors in the Philippines for some time now. working day and night talking about why creatives are important to our country, why they're essential, and why they need the support of the government. Whenever I give a speech to talk about this, I usually talk to government agencies, industry leaders, and other stakeholders. One morning though, with a speech prepared for that audience, I was surprised to find myself addressing a crowd of faces I wasn't anticipating. Instead of grown-ups, I had to talk to grade 5 students, children. I asked myself, why would they want to hear what I had to say? How could I explain what I was trying to do? What would my charts and data even mean to them? Where would I even begin? I couldn't give them my prepared speech, so instead I started by asking a question. I asked the kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? One said, a doctor. Another said, a lawyer. A businessman said a third. It was then that I asked the kids if any of them wanted to be a creative. For a moment, everyone was quiet. Then someone spoke up and asked, but what do creatives do? The question might have well been, what good are creatives for? I told them, look around you. A lot of what we enjoy was made by creatives. From the books we read, the games we play online, to the clothes that keep us safe and warm. Chances are creatives contributed to their making. From the houses we live in, to what we put in them that make it our homes, you bet that creatives had a hand in making them. In fact, a lot of the things you like, the things you love, are the work of creatives. So if we enjoy their work so much, we should value them as much as we value doctors, lawyers, and businessmen. I told the kids, when I was a child, all I wanted to be was a creative, to be an artist, to be in the theater. But not everyone wanted me to be an artist and to be a creative. In fact, many discouraged me from pursuing my dreams. It would be very hard to succeed, they said. Better to have a real job to fall back on. I wish, when I was their age, I was told that yes, I can be a creative. That when I grow up, I could earn and live as a creative. And as a creative, there's a future I have a hand in making and would want to be part of. We have that chance now. If we want creatives to help us create a better world, then we need to help creatives. By helping them, we help everyone as well. Our businesses, our culture, and our country. We need to come together as a community to create a future where the kids of today would want to be the creatives of tomorrow, and that nobody tells them to think otherwise.
So I hope, dear colleagues, you can all join us in Achieve, because firmly believe with all of my heart that #the future is creative. So please feel free to reach out to our office to sign up, to join the block. I think we're 30 plus right now. We were 60 plus in the previous Congress. So everyone is welcome to sign up to the block. You know our agenda. Hindi naman sapilitan yung pag-sign sa mga resolutions or sa mga bills. Kung kaya lang naman. But for efficiency, I hope we can all agree to just send our e-sig para hindi na hinahabol yung mga members sa pag-sign ng mga resolutions. And of course, we thank some of our recent members who joined. Of course, our senior Deputy Majority Leader, Sandra Marcos, is a recent member of the bloc. Of course, we enjoy the support as well of Speaker Martin Romualdez. Congressman Yeda Romualdez is also part of the bloc, and many others who continue to really fan the flame of creativity here in the halls of Congress. We also join you to support some of our future endeavors, including a year-long exhibit that will happen here in Congress starting in November. So we will keep you up to speed with that. Again, thank you. Balbalagi salamat tan masantos yung araw at sikayo namin. and greetings in creativity. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable De Venecia to the Committee on Rules for its appropriate action. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The privileged speech of the Honorable De Venecia is referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we would like to acknowledge the guests of Representative Dale Corvera of the 2nd District of Agusan del Norte, headed by its principal mayor, municipal mayor, Joselito Roble, the mayor's spouse, Rosel Roble, and the whole Sangguniang, headed by its municipal vice mayor, Ramon Bungabong, and the rest of the LGU heads and staff. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The House of Representatives welcomes the guests of the Honorable Dale B. Corvera of the 2nd District of Agusan del Norte. Thank you for your visit. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the Honorable J.C. Abalos of 4Ps Party List be recognized for his privileged speech. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable J.C. Abalos of the Party List 4Ps is recognized for his privileged speech.
Mr. Speaker, dear colleagues and guests, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Today, I rise on a matter of personal and collective privilege. About a year ago, a news article featured a mother who asked her neighbor if she could let her charge her mobile phone so her children could use it for their online classes since they did not have electricity. This she did every single school day for a year. That same mother, with her meager daily income of 300 pesos, would have to allot at least 200 pesos for internet load, which would last for 3 days. She would be spending 66 pesos per day, which could have gone to a kilo of rice and ulam. But instead, she chose to do what every selfless parent would, to ensure that their children will have a better opportunity in the future, which they, as parents, may not have gotten. This true-to-life story, Mr. Speaker, is just one of the sad realities in many underprivileged families. Hindi ito iisang istorya na dinanas ng iisang pamilya bunsod ng hindi mapigilang transisyon sa remote learning ng mga estudyante bilang resulta ng COVID-19 pandemic. What is more saddening, Mr. Speaker, is that there are more permutations of this problem. The lack of up-to-date gadgets such as smartphones, personal computers, or laptops. O kung sakaling meron na silang gadgets, problema ang kawalan ng reliable na internet connection, lalo na sa mga liblib na lugar. Kung meron naman ito ang mga pamilya, dinaranas naman ng mga estudyante ang kahirapan sa pag-unawa ng aralin. Hindi naman natin maaaring sisihin ang mga magulang kung hindi nila kayang turuan ang kanilang mga anak sa mga araling pinakamabisang na ituturo lamang ng guro. Isa pa ay ang kawalan ng panahon ng magulang dahil kinakailangan rin nilang maghanap buhay. We cannot deny, Mr. Speaker, that children in a remote learning environment also experience difficulty focusing and studying. The remote environment this online learning system has created has affected children's motivation to study, and their isolation has also impacted their mental health. Bagamat ang paaralan ay maituturi nating ikalawang tahanan, ang tahanan ay mahirap puwersahing maging ikalawang paaralan. Last week, classes officially started in various parts of the country. And finally, after 2 years, students are once again welcomed into the gates of schools for what we call face-to-face classes. This year, Mr. Speaker, our schools welcomed 28 million students according to the data from the Department of Education. While there was an undeniable decline in enrollment in 2021, ostensibly because of the difficulties posed by an online learning environment, one fact remains clear. 1 in every 4 Filipinos is a student. 1 in every 4 Filipinos is working hard to have a better life. 1 in every 4 Filipinos intends to become somebody someday. And to us, as their representatives, iisa ang ibig sabihin nito, Mr. Speaker. 1 in every 4 Filipinos needs us to ensure that their path to a better life and their quest to become somebody someday is not only accessible, but outright achievable. Though the past 2 years of remote or online learning had sad stories, the return to face-to-face classes did not mean a new chapter of happy stories. Mr. Speaker, in fact, it seems like we have just returned to the past chapters which bore a different set of sad stories. Teachers were conducting first day of classes outside classrooms because there is not just enough space. Children sat on the floor because there is an inadequacy of chairs and desks. Dumami ang mag-aaral, ngunit hindi lumaki o dumami ang pasilidad ng kanilang ikalawang tahanan. The problems that have been hounding our education system are not new. It has not been sound for decades because it needs to be tuned consistently, adapting to the present and to the future. Ang pangbansang sistema ng edukasyon ay may iniindang karamdaman. At ang mga karamdamang ito, nadagdagan lamang noong nagkaroon ng pandemya. The COVID pandemic has revealed vulnerabilities we did not even know we have. But the point of all this, Mr. Speaker, is not to say that the education system of our country is hopeless. It may be ill, but it is certainly not dead. As a cancer survivor myself, I can say with much certainty that hope springs eternal. Hindi maitatanggi, Mr. Speaker, that there are things best learned face-to-face or within the 4 walls of the school. But there are unforeseen events and circumstances which force education to have to happen outside the 4 walls of the school. Sa ngayon, ito ay ang pandemya. Ngunit sa ibang pagkakataon, maaaring ito ay ang sitwasyon sa pamilya kung saan ang mag-aaral ay kinakailangang mag-alaga ng kanyang may sakit na magulang. Maaaring ito ay para sa mga magulang na takot mai-expose ang kanilang mga anak sa virus na kumakalat. Maaaring ito ay para rin sa mga tinamaan ng sakit, ngunit ayaw makahawa ng iba at desidido pa rin pumasok sa eskwela. Speaking from my personal experience, maaaring ito ay para sa mga immunocompromised o persons with disabilities. Higit sa lahat, maaari ring ito ay para sa kinabukasan ng ating bayan. Sabi nga ni Rizal, ang kabataan ay ang pag-asa ng bayan. While I was recovering from my cancer treatment, Mr. Speaker, remote learning was my only choice. It gave me hope that there is a way to pursue one's education without having to sacrifice health, work, and family. And now, as a representative in the House of the People, remote learning remains my only choice, and the same for many of our fellow Filipinos. Remote learning or online learning is not for everybody, but let us not forget, Mr. Speaker, that in-person learning or face-to-face learning is not for everybody either. However, the most important point I wish to impart is this: education should be accessible to all Filipinos wherever they may be, whenever they may need it, and in whatever form it may be that best suits their situation. Making education accessible means making sure it is future-proof. The future of education is digital, whether in person or online. The last 2 years have brought to our attention the challenges of a digital learning environment. Huwag na nating hintayin pa ang panibagong pandemya bago pa natin paghandaan ang pagbuo ng isang future-proof education system. The generation we are in is greatly challenged. The problems of our forefathers are still our problems today. The recent past presented us with problems of a newer kind. Ngunit, kasabay ng pagharap natin sa mga pagsubok ng nakaraan na nating minana, isama natin sa ating mga layunin ang masolusyonan ang pagsubok ng kumakailan lamang bago ito maging pagsubok muli sa hinaharap. With the combined efforts of the representatives of this body, I trust that this august chamber will work towards what it was mandated to do, to give priority to education, science, and technology, to promote human liberation and development, to ensure that their paths to a better life are achievable, to ensure that any Filipino can be somebody someday. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker. Muli, magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that recognize the Honorable Franz Castro of ACT Teachers Party List to interpellate our party list representative, Honorable J.C. Abalos.
The Honorable Franz Castro is recognized for her interpellation.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker. At nagpapasalamat ako sa ating batang-bata, very brave na kinatawan mula sa 4Ps, Congressman JC. So ako po ay sumusuporta doon sa kanyang privilege speech na kalagayan ng ating edukasyon sa ngayon na medyo matapang niyang inirelate yun sa kanyang sarili. Tama naman, Mr. Speaker, bago pa po magpandemya ay talagang naghihingalo na ang ating edukasyon dahil sa iba't ibang mga problemang kinakaharap. So isa sa mga solusyon na pwede nating gawin kaugnay niyaan, tatanungin po natin ang ating kinatawan kung siya ay siya ay sang-ayon na yung ating budget sa edukasyon ay maging sanang 6% ng GDP. Dahil hanggang sa ngayon, Mr. Speaker, nakita naman natin sa dami ng ating mga pangangailangan, nagpandemya pa, ay nangangailangan talaga ng malaking budget. So naniniwala ba ang ating kinatawan mula sa 4Ps, Mr. Speaker, kaugnay nung pagtataas ng ating budget sa edukasyon? Bagamat number 1 daw ito sa mga agencies na bibigyan ng malaking budget, pero maliit pa rin. So anong masasabi dito ng ating kinatawan, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, ako po ay sumasang-ayon sa manifestation ni Congresswoman Castro. Naniniwala po ako na kailangan po dagdagan natin ang ating budget pagdating ho sa edukasyon dahil ayon po sa ating NEP, umakyat po ng halos 77 billion pesos ang budget ng DepEd kasama ang mga attached agencies nito. Pero bukod po sa pagtaas ng budget, maganda rin po na aralin po natin bilang mga kongresista ang mga bagay na maaari nating pwedeng i-improve pagdating po sa paggawa ng mga standards sa ating educational system, particularly sa online learning systems natin. Sana po makapaglaan rin po tayo ng pondo para dito upang ma-develop po natin ang sistemang ito para sa kapakanan ng mga marginalized sectors ng ating lipunan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nagpapasalamat ako kay Congressman JC dun sa kasagutan. At naniniwala ako na pwede kaming magtulungan para doon sa in terms of the budget of education, hindi lang sa basic education, kundi sa higher education and technical educational and vocational education. Isa pa, Mr. Speaker, kaugnay naman ng learning crisis. Dumanas tayo ng pandemya at ayon sa statistics ng World Bank, 9 out of 10 ang ating ang ating mga estudyante na hindi nakakabasa from 10 years old below. So ano kaya yung pwede nating maging solusyon kaugnay nito? Pwede ba nating malaman ang pwedeng gawin o pwede nating mai-suggest sa DepEd halimbawa, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, sumasang-ayon po ako sa pananaw ni Congresswoman Castro. Kaya po binanggit ko po sa aking talumpati na hindi pa po perfect ang ating online learning system. Kaya mahalaga po na pagtuunan ho natin ito ng pansin upang ma-improve ito at marami pa po ang makikinabang dito ng mga estudyante. And sana maging mas effective po ito once na matutukan na po ito ng Kongreso.
Ayan. So maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat, Kong JC. Mabuhay ka.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the speech of the Honorable Abalos and in its interpellation be referred to the Committee on Rules for its appropriate action. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
The privileged speech of the Honorable J.C. Abalos of Party List 4Ps, as well as the interpellation of the Honorable Franz Castro, are referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the gentleman from the 6th District of Isabela, the Honorable Faustino D., be recognized to avail of the privilege hour.
The gentleman from the 6th District of Isabela, the Honorable Faustino Ino A.D. V., is recognized for his privileged speech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our friends and colleagues in the House of Representatives, isang magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Just over a month ago, President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. delivered his first State of the Nation address. In it, he explicitly declared the importance of energy in efforts to jumpstart the economy. According to the President, a fundamental requirement for growth and increased employment will be the availability of cheap, reliable energy. This, stressed the President, comes under the category of ease of doing business. Furthermore, he emphasized that our energy sector requires our attention if the country is to attract investors, both local and foreign, to set up shop here in the country. The President correctly pointed out that at present, our demand for energy far exceeds our reliable supply. We must increase the level of energy production, and we must look at every possible option that would be appropriate for the Philippine situation. So how exactly will we do this? According to the President, we must examine the entire system of transmission and distribution for the purpose of finding ways to lower the price of energy to the consumer and to industry. We must expand the network of our transmission lines while examining schemes to improve the operation of our electrical cooperatives. All this in aid of reducing energy costs, especially but not limited to households. To restate the President's final point, we must examine schemes to improve the operation of our electric cooperatives or ECs. This representation rises this afternoon not only a matter of personal privilege, but on a matter of deep, deep concern, stemmed from the mounting complaints from our fellow Isabelinos who want answers from their ECs. And as such, please allow me to relay the concerns of our stakeholders and leaders from Isabela, because with me here today, Mr. Speaker, is a copy of a Sangguniang Panlalawigan resolution supported by a manifesto signed by 30 of the 37 mayors of our province of Isabela, urging the National Electrification Administration to take over management and operation of ISELCO 1 and ISELCO 2 for reasons I will discuss today. While it is true, Mr. Speaker, that a community can survive without electricity, it cannot thrive without it. For those in the country who live in areas that have affordable, accessible power, it is easy to take electricity for granted. In some areas in the Philippines, families can use their appliances and charge their mobile devices 24/7, without fear that they may spend several hours without power. At the end of the month, households can expect to be charged a reasonable amount for the electricity they consume. For families and households like these, power is an afterthought. It is just there. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for everywhere in the country. The truth is that there are still areas that suffer from expensive electricity, and regular power outages in some areas, they do not even have electricity at all. To date, an estimated 11% of the country's households still remain unenergized. Why do some areas have better power services than others? There are several considerations involved, but one major factor is the electric cooperative that is responsible for a given area. If the EC that manages your area is reliable, then consumers can be assured of fair prices for electricity and dependable quality service. If it does not, then consumers definitely encounter problems with regard to their power supply. Sadly, the province of Isabela is one of the areas that has concerns with the supply of electricity, and the challenges faced by us Isabelinos can be traced to issues with our electric cooperatives. The Philippine experience with ECs tell us that an EC should exhibit 3 characteristics to be able to properly serve its member consumer owners. First is the EC should be able to provide a steady supply of electricity at reasonable and affordable rates. Second, it must be transparent and accountable to the MCOs it serves. Third, its actions must be consistent with our laws. On all 3 counts, Mr. Speaker, the 2 ECs in Isabela, Iselco 1 and Iselco 2, are found gravely wanting to the detriment of our fellow Isabelinos and our leaders' efforts to improve the economy of the province. Ano ba po ang issue namin sa dalawang ECs na ito? Ano po ang problema namin sa Iselco 1 at si Iselco 2? Sa totoo lang po, Mr. Speaker, marami po talaga kaming hinanakit. But for purposes of brevity, this representation will focus on 3 major issues. First is that we suffer from power rates that are more expensive than that in other parts of the country. For example, in Metro Manila, Meralco charges 9.54 pesos per kilowatt hour. The Central Negros Electric Cooperative, Seneco, charges 12.17 pesos. Davao Oriental Cooperative charges 12 pesos per kilowatt hour. Sa amin pong probinsya, Mr. Speaker, Iselco 1 and Iselco 2 on average charge 15.50 to 16 pesos per kilowatt hour. Households in Isabela are charged more for electricity than their counterparts in other parts of the country. A harsh reality that is compounded by the fact that like all other provinces in the country, the average household income in Isabela is lower than in other regions. If you are a businessman, why would you set up shop in our province if you are going to pay more for electricity? This is just one of the many challenges we in Isabela face as we work to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Gusto po namin umasenso at willing po kami magtrabaho, Mr. Speaker. Masisipag at magagaling ang mga Isabelino, pero kung ganitong sitwasyon, simula pa lang ay dehado ka na kaysa sa iba't ibang parte ng ating bansa kung saan mas mura ang kuryente. Understanding that our Isabela residents suffer from expensive power rates as well as service interruptions, the Sangguniang Panlalawigan conducted an inquiry to tackle the increases in electricity bills and frequent power outages. Following this inquiry, the SP passed a resolution on July 13th last year requesting the ERC to allow Iselco 1 and Iselco 2 to add an item reflecting the refund of over-recoveries in the electric bills of our consumers. With the economic difficulties many of our countrymen now face, the leaders in our province recognize that every effort must be made to ease their financial burden. Reduced electricity costs means more money for food, transportation, school supplies, and other urgent basic needs and commodities. Commodities that are getting more expensive by the day. Pero bakit pa umabot sa punto na kailangan pang mag-issue ng resolusyon ng probinsya? If an EC exists to serve its member consumer owners, shouldn't it take the initiative to adjust its rates so that these are fair? The SP has already discovered that Iselco 1 is not fully implementing the ERC decision, which requires them to refund a net of over 178 million pesos. At kailan po nila gagawin ito, Mr. Speaker? To date, no effort has been made to provide refunds for the member consumer owners in Isabela. Naghihintay pa rin po kami hanggang sa araw na ito, Mr. Speaker. Our second major issue with Iselco 1 and Iselco 2 is tied with the first. We understand that there are many factors that are involved in the pricing mechanisms of electricity, which were mentioned last week by one of our colleagues, Representative Dan Fernandez, in his privileged speech. and that these influence how much consumers must pay in a given area. As member consumer owners, Mr. Speaker, we deserve to know why we pay a premium for a service that is cheaper in other parts of the country. Are we paying higher prices because of limited supplies? Are we paying higher prices because of rising maintenance costs? Are we paying higher prices because of typhoon damage-related expenses? Or, Mr. Speaker, many Isabeleños believe that we are paying the price for mismanagement and inefficiencies from our ECs. But how can we truly know, Mr. Speaker, when we are not even allowed access to the financial statements and records of our electric cooperatives? Even this representation, an elected member of Congress, has been rebuffed in efforts to secure these financial documents, if only to better appreciate the states of our ECs and the reasons behind our high power costs. How can we extend a helping hand to assist our ECs if they will not cooperate with inquiries and simple requests for important documents, which as a member consumer owner, we should all have the right to access such documents for the sake of transparency. I am not alone, Mr. Speaker, in efforts to demand transparency and accountability from ISELCO 1 and 2. On July 12 last year, the SP passed a resolution urging the NEA to conduct an immediate financial and legal audit of the transactions of both ECs from 2016 to the present. The resolution was prompted by the results of their inquiry, which has unearthed details that indicate that unsound management on the parts of ISELCO 1 and 2 may have led to higher electricity rates and power outages in the province. Something that could have been avoided if the management of both ECs were discharging their sworn duty to promote and further advance the welfare of member consumer owners. If these ECs want to dispel this notion, all they have to do is provide us documentation to explain the state of electricity distribution in the province. May email naman po, may snail mail, may personal delivery, pero wala pa rin po kaming natatanggap hanggang ngayon. No effort has been made to provide these financial statements or these reports. Our third issue, Mr. Speaker, involves the legality of the actions of our electric cooperatives. Please allow me to cite just 2 examples. One, the ECs are party to irregularities that led to the removal of NEA Administrator Edgardo Masongsong last year. When President Rodrigo Roa Duterte sacked Mr. Masongsong after the latter was held administratively liable for grave misconduct, the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission had recommended his removal for violating RA 3019 and also the Omnibus Election Code. The Office of the President later directed the PACC to charge Mr. Masongsong before the Office of the Ombudsman. Malacanang gave the directive after it found Masongsong acted in flagrant disregard of rules when he repeatedly failed to object to EC's continuing financial support for the political activities of certain political parties. 2, ISELCO 1 is violating laws regarding the mandatory retirement of its general manager. Despite already receiving retirement benefits and retiring from his position, and despite the availability of individuals qualified to take over the position, it has chosen to retain the same person and to set requirements above and beyond what is set by existing statutes. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, but many of the current board of directors of our ECs do not meet the continuing qualification requirement in Section 15 and Section 16 of RA 10351, which states that an EC director officer, in order to remain as such, must continue to possess all qualifications and none of the disqualifications of individuals appointed or elected as EC director officer and disqualify those unfound fit. Let me again hark back at history, Mr. Speaker. Almost 20 years ago, our colleague, the former President and now Pampanga Rep. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, delivered a speech in which she praised the late former NEA Administrator Father Francisco Silva for saving Boracay, which had been suffering power outages because of the mismanagement of its EC. She credited Father Silva for intervening and taking over the Aklan Electric Cooperative in order to save Boracay, literally and figuratively lighting up our tourism industry. Father Silva, President Arroyo said, rescued them from darkness on a higher plane. He brought the light of honesty and transparency to the rural electrification sector. That is exactly what we need in Isabela, Mr. Speaker. We need someone to step in and rescue the province from the darkness of inefficiency and mismanagement. We urge the NEA and the Department of Energy to intervene on behalf of the member consumer owners in Isabela who must pay for the missteps of their ECs and who are made to suffer from unsatisfactory service because our ECs are not protecting the interests of our member consumer owners. Mr. Speaker, hindi po nauubos din ang dumadating sa aming mga complaints sa social media at sa aming mga opisina mula sa ating mga kababayan sa Isabela ukol sa estado ng kuryente sa ating lalawigan, sa aming lalawigan. We cannot simply shrug off these complaints dahil ang aming mga kababayan ang nahihirapan sa sitwasyon na ito, Mr. Speaker. Marami silang katanungan sa iba't ibang charges ng mga electric cooperatives sa kanilang mga electricity bills. So on that final note, Mr. Speaker, this representation wholeheartedly agrees with the President. We must address the issues in the energy sector if we are to spur development in different parts of the country. Let us start with the problems in Isabela and let us work together to return the power to our people, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat po.
The Chair will entertain a motion from the Majority Leader to extend the privilege hour.
Mr. Speaker, before we proceed with the interpellation of the privilege speech of the Honorable D, I move that we extend the privilege hour to 1 more hour.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. Motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Richard Gomez for his interpellation.
The Honorable Richard Gomez is recognized for his interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the good congressman from Isabela, Representative D, if you could yield to some questions, please.
Mr. Speaker, this representation gladly yields to some questions from the Honorable Representative Gomez.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I understand the sentiments and headache of our representative from Isabela. When your people come to you and ask you questions on why electricity rates are so high, at times we cannot give them proper answers because of too many secrets hidden under the web on the power, on the subject of energy. I'd like to know, Mr. Speaker, if you're willing to come up with an investigation that we can file a resolution on the Committee on Energy so that we may invite agencies and cooperatives that are giving us headaches. Would you yield to that, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, this representation would gladly welcome the suggestion of our Honorable Representative Richard Gomez. And actually, Mr. Speaker, I, along with the representatives or the district representatives of the province of Isabela, will be filing a resolution to conduct an investigation on our electric cooperatives. And as such, we are requesting NEA to take over ISELCO 1 and 2 so that we may have a transparent investigation of these said cooperatives, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it is very important to ask questions, to find answers from government agencies or quasi-government agencies from the National Electrification Administration, and also to check on the EPIRA law, to check on the WESM, and to check on the different cooperatives that are giving us headaches. I understand your rates are too high, 15 to 16 per kilowatt hour. It's the same rate that we get in Ormoc City and in our district. I think, and I truly believe that it is too high, and it's giving burden to our households and giving burden to our businesses. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to enjoin the good congressman as he files his resolution. I'd like to manifest that I'd like to be a part of that resolution, that we should investigate and use our power as congressman That way we may find solutions to lower the problems in electricity. And that way it will give our households, it will give our businesses a lower rate. Hopefully in the future, as we find out what we need to do to lower electricity rates, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, unang-uno, salamat po sa ating representante Richard Gomez sa kanya pong suporta sa amin pong resolution, sa pag-imbestiga po sa ating mga electric cooperatives. At hindi lamang po yun, Mr. Speaker, tama pong sinabi ni Honorable Richard Gomez, na karamihan po sa atin, ng ating mga kababayan, hindi po talaga naiintindihan kung ano talagang laman ng ating mga electricity bill. Napakaraming questionable charges, at iba. So once and for all, Mr. Speaker, during these investigations, we can find out from ERC, from NEA, which of these charges are actually the ones which are approved by the ERC. In that, Mr. Speaker, that our kababayans aren't charged unnecessary expenses. Dahil alam naman po natin, hirap na po ang ating mga kababayan sa panahon ngayon, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping that in the 19th Congress, we will be able to find real answers that will give matter to the lives of the different people in this country. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much to the good representative from Isabela. Daghang salamat.
Maraming
Majority
salamat
Leader.
din po.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the gentleman from Philreca, the Honorable Congressman Presley De Jesus for his interpellation.
The Honorable De Jesus is recognized for his interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May the good gentleman, Congressman of Isabela, yield to some questions.
Mr. Speaker, this representation would gladly take some questions from the Honorable Representative from Philreca Party List.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask our good gentleman, kung alam nyo ba na ang ISELCO 1, ISELCO 2 for the last 10 years, hindi nagtaas ng kanilang rate, ng kanilang DSM. Before you answer that question, Mr. Speaker, I also enjoying the good gentleman from Isabela na it's high time na magkaroon ng investigasyon, no? Not only the electric cooperatives, but all the distribution utilities, including the generation and the transmission companies, no? As you know, Mr. Speaker, the electric cooperatives, no? Yung kita lang po nila dyan ay piso per kilowatt hour, no? So hindi po sila, pag nagtaas po sila ng presyo, hindi po ibig sabihin sa kanila napupunta ang kita. Ulitin ko po, the electric cooperatives are making only 1 peso per kilowatt hour. Yung iba po dyan, 89 cents. And for the last 12 years, 2010, that was the last time the ERC approved the rate increase, no? Because the electric cooperative is totally different from private distribution utilities. The electric cooperatives, ay rate methodology po nila ay cash flow, while the private distribution utilities, sila po ay allowed by DRC to make more money because they invest a lot. So my question to Congressman, the good gentleman from Isabela po, yung ISELCO 1 po, ISELCO 2, ay for the last 12 years hindi po nag-increase. Alam niyo po ba yun, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, yes, this representation is aware of that, Mr. Speaker. But the things in question, Mr. Speaker, are the other charges that are included in our electricity bills. Alam ko po, malaki ang karanasan ng ating representante from Philreca. And yun nga po ang ating dahilan para po mag-launch ng investigation. Nang once and for all, malinaw po, mabigyan linaw po tayo galing sa ERC at NEA kung ano pong mga charges ang talagang pwede lang singilin sa ating mga kababayan. Dahil minsan po ay meron mga membership rate charges na ang isang tao na may-ari siya ng ilang properties niya, isa lang naman siyang member consumer owner. Bakit? Why is he or she charged 5 times that amount? Or that same multiple membership cost? All these other surcharges and service charges, Mr. Speaker, are the ones who are being questioned or that are in question by the Sangguniang Panlalawigan, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the gentleman, no, Congressman Ino, na totoo yan, marami kayong, when you look at your power bills, no, ang haba, napakahaba. But when you look at that, you will see generation, transmission, and all taxes po yan. UCME, yung tinatawag natin Universal Charges for Missionary Electrification, nandyan po ang VAT. Binat na po tayo sa generation, nag-VAT na naman sila sa transmission, and nag-VAT na naman po sa distribution. And all charges, even po yung sa tinatawag natin sa DNR, may charges po lahat yan. So even that stranded cost, no, for the longest time, for the last 20 years, charge pa rin po tayo. So napakarami po charges. So it's high time talaga na dapat yan na malaman na rin dito sa Kongreso kung sino ba talaga ang monopoly when it comes to those charges that are being mentioned by the distinguished gentleman. So siguro may follow-up question, no? Because I heard also from him that the ISELCO 1, ISELCO 2, hindi po nila binubuksan ng kanilang libro. Actually, every year po, may tinatawag silang mga electric cooperatives na Annual General Membership Assembly, wherein the electric cooperatives present their annual financial statement. At doon makikita kung lahat po yon ay makikita ko ano po ang status nila. And remind you, Mr. Speaker, that ISELCO 1, for the last 7 years po ay AAA. That's the highest awards that being given by the National Electrification Administration para sa mga electric cooperatives na maganda ang performance. There are 121 electric cooperatives, 87 are AAA, and ISELCO 1 is one of that. So I would like to ask that distinguished gentleman that if he knows that yung pong TRO ng AGMA po na ISELCO 1, na TRO po yan ng certain attorney Abuan. For some reason, hindi namin alam bakit TNRO. Alam mo ba niya yun, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, just to answer the first query of our representative from Philreca Party List, una-una po sa lahat, Mr. Speaker, this is precisely why the Sangguniang Panlalawigan invited both ISELCO 1 and ISELCO 2 for an inquiry in front of the members of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, hindi po cooperative ang ating mga representatives from ISELCO 1 and ISELCO 2. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the General Manager of ISELCO 1 was invited 4 times ng Sangguniang Panlalawigan in which he never showed up, Mr. Speaker. The Sangguniang Panlalawigan, base po sa kanilang resolution, ay humihingi ng maraming dokumento mula po sa ating mga electric cooperative, ngunit hindi rin sila nagko-comply o nagko-cooperate. Sana po alam ng ating representative from Philreca yan, dahil pag ganito pong nahihirapan tayong kunin ang kooperasyon ng mga representatives natin from ISELCO 1 and ISELCO 2, syempre it raises some questions. Bakit hindi sila transparent? Bakit ayaw nila mag-cooperate sa ating mga inquiries or ng ating Sangguniang Panlalawigan? So yun po, Mr. Speaker, ang pinagmulan ng Sangguniang Resolution ng ating Sangguniang Panlalawigan ng Isabela, Mr. Speaker.
I agree with him, Mr. Speaker, na hindi lang 4 times tinawag, no? I think way back in 2017, tinatawag na sila. And the first time, this is what I heard and I saw, no? Na nung tinawag daw sila doon, instead of the high electricity rate ang concern, iba-iba yung tinatanong. So that's on the record, so we can always check that at kami rin, naka-record sa amin yan. So at any rate, no, I agree with the distinguished gentleman, no, congressman natin, na it's high time talaga na dapat, no, ang Kongreso na magpatawag dyan. Siguro may another question, Mr. Speaker, no? It's not only ISELCO 1 or ISELCO 2 na mataas ang rate, no? Halos lahat, no? We can blame that on the generation, no? Para siguro maintindihan ho ng ating mga kababayan na nakikinig ngayon at ating mga fellow colleagues dito, ang energy family po ay nasa 3 po yan. Yung generation, yan po yung nagpo-produce ng kuryente. Distribution, transmission, yan po yung malalaki nyo nakikita sa mga bundok, yung NGCP at ang distribution. So, ang distribution utilities po ay parang tindera lang sa palengke yan. Naghihintay lang po na magtitinda sila. Ngayon, kung wala sila ititinda, wala ko sila isusupply. At yan po ay nakalagay po yan na sa EPIRA law na the generation through CSP po ay kailangan nila magkaroon ng competitive selection process para po makakuha tayo ng mababang kuryente. Ang tanong ko po ngayon, Mr. Speaker, that the ISELC-1 po, alam niyo ba, nagkaroon tayo ng competitive selection process way back in 2016. Ang nangyari po yan, nakakuha tayong murang kuryente but it was denied by the Supreme Court. So ngayon po, ang ERC po ay nagpadala ho kami ng sulat sa kanila na kumbaga reconsider po, motion for reconsideration po, na dapat maayos na po yan. Alam niyo ba yan, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, no, I'm not aware of that. Thank you for informing this representation of that information, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, thank you. Totoo yan, no? Thank you very much, distinguished Mr. Speaker. Yan po ang nangyari po yan. But considering the fact na meron po tayong CSP, yan po yung dumadaan po, no? Sa ERC, even sa NEA and DOE when it comes to their terms of reference. So mahirap po na bigla magtataas ng presyo ang kuryente ang mga electric cooperatives. We are highly regulated, no? But again, Mr. Speaker, I agree with Congressman Isabela na dapat na maimbestigahan to. Hindi lang po ang ISELCO 1, ISELCO 2, kundi lahat po ng electric cooperatives. Kasi gusto natin malaman talaga ano ho ba ang reason bakit tumaas ang kuryente sa ating lalawigan. So ako po nakikisa na dapat po maimbestigahan to. But if we investigate it, dapat po talaga para sa lahat. And siguro, panghuling question ko lang po kay Mr. Speaker na ang rate po ng ISELCO 1 po ay hindi ho 16 pesos, kundi 15 pesos. Correct me if I'm wrong, 16 pesos ba na banggit nyo kanina, Mr. Speaker?
Yes po, I mentioned on average, ISELCO 1 and ISELCO 2 are 15.5 to 16 pesos per kilowatt per hour, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, okay, even though in Isabela is a very big province, no? There are 2 electric cooperatives, no? It's being managed by 2 different general managers, ISELCO 1 and ISELCO 2. So ang ISELCO 1 po, for the record, is 15 pesos and 5 cents, no? And ISELCO 2 is 16 pesos. So yun po. But in general, Mr. Speaker, out of 121 electric cooperatives, ang average po nila is nasa 16 pesos, no? But again, ulitin ko po, Mr. Speaker, ang ISELCO 1 po, hindi pag nakita nyo po yung resibo, hindi po lahat ay napupunta sa electric cooperatives or sa distribution utilities. DSM, piso lang po kada kilowatt hour. So pag nagtaas po ng kuryente, hindi po napupunta sa mga electric cooperatives. Yan lang po. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much, Congressman.
Thank you, Honorable Kong President Jesus. And again, I thank you, for supporting, wanting to support our initiative in finding out why our electricity bills are so high. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, I hope you can also join us in finding out ang concerns po natin with yung internal operations ng ating mga kooperatiba sa ating pong lalawigan ng Isabela. Like kagaya nga na nabanggit ko ho kanina, ang ating mga electric cooperatives, meron pong mga overcharges na hindi pa rin po na-refund sa ating mga kababayan. Higit pa doon, Mr. Speaker, na ang dami po sa kanila din na serving officers ng ating mga boards within these 2 electric cooperatives whose terms are already expired and many of them are already in violation ng ating pong batas sa continuing qualification. And Mr. Speaker, yun po again is stemmed from the mounting complaints from our kababayans dahil po sa ating pong higher energy cost and also the quality of service sa ating pong mga sinasakupan. So again, Mr. Speaker, maraming salamat po.
Mr. Speaker, siguro, if I allow me, just to say something just to
Yes, please
join.
proceed.
Yun na, tama po siya, no? Overcharges po. Pero ulitin ko po, yung overcharges na yan, hindi po napupunta sa electric cooperatives. Just to make clear po, no? Kung ano pa yung overcharges niyan, hindi po napupunta sa electric cooperatives. When it comes po yung sinasabi naman po nila yung sa mga board of directors, yan po ay dapat nagka-election po nung 2021. Nagka-pandemic po kaya hindi natuloy. So ngayon po, tinutuloy po lahat ng electric cooperatives. You can always check that in NEA po na tuloy-tuloy po ang election nila. In fact, magkakaroon sila election ngayon na this coming November. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Congressman Inday.
Thank you, Kong.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the gentleman from the 1st District of Zambales, the Honorable Jefferson Kong-Hoon, for his interpellation.
The Honorable Kong Hoon is recognized for his interpellation.
Mr. Speaker, magandang hapon po. Humingi po ako ng pagkakataon para matanong ang aking kaibigan na nagre-representa sa magandang probinsya ng Isabela.
Mr. Speaker, this representation will gladly take questions from the Honorable Representative Kong Hoon.
Una po sa lahat, ako po'y nakikiisa, lalong-lalo na sa inyong sentimiento sa Isabela. Dahil narinig ko kanina na napakataas ang singil ng kuryente sa inyong lugar at ito yung maabot ng 16 to 17 pesos per kilowatt hour. Tama po ba?
15 to 16 pesos po.
15 to 16 pesos per kilowatt hour. Kami po sa unang distrito ng Zambales, ang kuryente po namin ngayon ay maabot ng 20 pesos per kilowatt hour. Isa sa pinakamataas na singilin, hindi lamang po sa Luzon, kundi sa buong Pilipinas. At naiintindihan ko po kanina yung pakikipagtalastasan kanina ng ating representante sa PhilReca na talaga namang ipinagtatanggol yung ating mga electric cooperatives. At naniniwala naman po tayo na hindi lahat ng mga opisyales ng electric cooperatives may kalokohan. Pero hindi naman siguro lahat matitino din. So, kasama po ako sa panawagan ng representante ng probinsya ng Isabela na magkaroon po sana ng investigasyon lalong-lalo na po patungkol sa singilin na tumataas na singilin sa presyo ng kuryente hindi lamang po sa Zambales, hindi lamang po sa Isabela, kundi sa buong Pilipinas. Kasi po sa amin, minsan pag tinatanong ng ordinaryong consumer, ang ating mga electric cooperatives o mga nagsusupply ng kuryente, minsan sila pa yung galit sa amin. Sila pa yung napakahirap magpaliwanag sa aming katanungan. Kami naman po ay nagbabayad ng aming mga kuryente sa kanila at miyembro po kami ng kooperatiba. Pero talagang minsan napakahirap natin silang hingian ng paliwanag kung bakit tumataas ang kuryente. Kaya hindi lamang po yun, mga electric cooperatives ang nagiging problema. Minsan po pati yung mga pribadong mga kumpanya na nagsusupply ng kuryente. Katulad po yan sa amin sa Olongapo City, problema din po namin yung sobrang taas na singilin na nanggagaling sa OEDC o yung nagbibigay ng supply ng kuryente sa Olongapo. Kaya sinusuportahan ko yung paniwagan ng ating kongresista sa Isabela na magkaroon ng isang komprehensibang investigasyon, lalong-lalo na sa patungkol sa supply ng kuryente, para na rin po sa ating mga kababayan at para na rin po sa ating mga consumer na talaga naapektuhan ng ganitong klaseng paghihirap. Magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat.
Maraming salamat, Representative Kong Hoon, sa inyong suporta sa ating nais gawin na investigasyon ukol sa sitwasyon ng kuryente sa ating bansa. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the gentleman from the Lone District of Santa Rosa City, the Honorable Dan Fernandez, for his interpellation.
Maraming salamat po.
The Honorable Dan Fernandez is recognized for his
Thank
interpellation.
you, Deputy Speaker, for giving me a chance to interpellate the good gentleman from Isabela, Ino D. Will the good gentleman from Isabela yield to some questions?
Mr. Speaker, gladly po. Actually, nabanggit ko si Honorable Dan Fernandez kanina dahil nga po sa exhaustive deliberation ukol sa kuryente last week. Kaya gladly po, Mr. Speaker.
As I about to enter the plenary, I asked Congressman Richard Gomez about the privilege speech that you rendered a while ago. Unfortunately, I was not able to hear the totality of the issue, but I heard that it is about the electric cooperative as well, the Celco 1 and the Celco 2, that caters the whole province of Isabela. Mr. Speaker, as much as we wanted to solve the problem of the electric cooperatives, small electric cooperatives, in distributing low electricity, the power of this house is limited into a certain areas. But there are two types of members of the electric cooperative. A while ago, I was listening also to Representative De Jesus, and I heard this justification of the electric cooperatives being non-profit and non-stock. At as a matter of fact, hindi sila kumikita. But unfortunately, the reality of the situation, there are two kinds of electric cooperatives. Those board of directors who are scrupulous, and those board of directors who are true in nature. In other words, we have to classify, Mr. Speaker, the kinds of electric cooperatives who are operating in our area of responsibility. Just like, for example, in your area in Isabela, a distinguished colleague. It is not for us to judge what kind of board of directors the cooperative had, but of course, being the congressman of the said area, you have more access to the actuality of the situation. And that's the reason why we believe on what you are fighting right now. But on second thought, we also believe on the veracity of the statement made by Representative De Jesus. And that's the reason why we enter into that kind of situation, to investigate what really transpired. If the old documents that were submitted will be handed to us, we will be able to find out what happened to the funds that the consumer is paying to the electric cooperatives. At kanina nga, you were a bit of your interpellation. I heard that hindi inaalis na sila, tapos na yung term nila, pero hindi sila umaalis. Can you kindly give this representation some information about that matter regarding the overstaying official of the electric cooperative, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, according po kasi sa ating batas that after the term of office expires from the board of directors, ay kailangan na po nilang magkaroon ng special election or mapilian po sila or pumili na ng bagong mga officers. Marami po sa kanila, Mr. Speaker, ay hindi na rin po talaga qualified. Dahil according po sa RA 10351, dun po sa Section 15 and 16, ay dapat po continuing yung qualification ng ating mga officers and board of directors. Subalit marami po sa mga board of directors ng iba't ibang bayan, marami po sa kanilang mga officers ay talagang hindi na po qualified. Nakalagay po doon sa ating batas, if found unfit, that they should be removed from office, Mr. Speaker.
In other words, Mr. Speaker, you were saying that all these board of directors who have been appointed to that position are not qualified anymore because of the are not qualified because of the
of certain continuing qualifications.
Yes, of course. So, in other words, Mr. Speaker, maybe it's time that we really look into this, no? I don't know how to say it, but maybe the high cost of fuel and the high cost of coal have ignited this kind of problem that we are into right now. Actually, Mr. Speaker, not only the province of Isabela who is experiencing this problem. As a matter of fact, lahat tayo, lalo na po yung mga maliliit na mga kooperatiba. May I be educate on something that your Celco in the province of Isabela, the generation rate that they are contracting with the generation power plant
Ano po ba yung klase ng fuel ang ginagamit nila? Are they using coal, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not certain, but I'm sure one of the members, coal.
Coal.
According to our representative from PhilReca, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, if that's the case, Mr. Speaker, that's the reason why we have a high cost of electricity in the whole country. Primarily, years back, yung pong coal, yung uling, yung po ang pinakamura na klase ng kuryente na ginagamit po ng ating mga electric cooperatives. The problem with our different electric cooperatives, hindi po marunong tayong mag-blend, hindi po tayo marunong mag-variation, hindi po tayo binibigyan ng pagkakataon na mag-diversify tayo sa maraming klase ng kuryente. And that's the reason why nagka-problema po ang Isabela, ang Ormoc, ang ibang mga ibang lalawigan sa ating pong bansa. Dahil po, ang kinontrata po nila during that time na masyado pang mura ang coal lang. Uling lang po yung kanilang kinontrata. Dahil yung po ang pinakamura. Hindi po sila nagsama ng ibang klase ng kuryente. Katulad ng binanggit ko po dati, iba-iba po ang klase ng kuryente. If only we diversify, iba-ibang klaseng kuryente ang ginawa po natin, biglang tumaas yung coal, hindi po tayo sama maaapektong bigla. But because during that time na mura, yun ang kinontrata natin, kaya ngayon, wala tayong ibang klaseng magamit na kuryente doon sa ating lugar ng mga ating electric cooperatives. Kaya, kapit tayo sa patalim dahil ito po ang kontrata natin. And that's the reason why it is very important that on the coming budget of ERC and Department of Energy, we try to find out what are their short-term plan, what are their mid-term plan, and what is their long-term plan. Pero specifically, we focus on the short term. Why? Because right now, we are in a very precarious situation. Very critical and dangerous. People are getting angry. Di ba? Lahat ng mga kababayan natin, galit na sa atin at sinasabi na napakataas ng ating pong kuryente. And at the same time, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to ask also our good gentleman from Isabela, Congressman D, about the different charges that you have found out in Celco 1 and Celco 2. Kasi kanina I was talking to Congressman Richard Gomez. While I'm talking to Richard Gomez, I was listening to your interpellation and I was confused what to focus on. But fortunately, I was able to get some. Yung pong mga submitted sa inyo. So can you kindly educate me on that as well?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and I agree with the Honorable Gentleman Dan Fernandez na alam ko naman po na limited din po talaga ang nagagawa ng mga electric cooperatives kung with regards to pricing. But I was talking about some of the questionable charges lang, Mr. Speaker, na even ang ating mga consumers ay hindi nila alam kung pwede ba itong mga charges na to, kagaya ng iba't ibang klase ng membership charges, service fees, iba't ibang uri ng surcharges na hindi po namin alam yung basihan. So yun naman po ang gusto namin bigyang clarity, Mr. Speaker, sa pamamagitan ng isang investigasyon kung tama or kung ano po yung basihan ng mga charges na ito at kung okay lang ba na charge natin ang ating mga consumers ng ganitong klaseng mga charges. Kasi ako po, meron akong membership charge sa bill ko, 800 something pesos. Para saan? Para saan ito? Meron mga surcharges, service charge na 300 pesos, 400 pesos. Yung mga ganitong uri ng charges, Mr. Speaker, nakakadagdag po sa gastos ng ating mga kababayan. So yun po yung nais kong mabigyang linaw sa pamamagitan ng isang investigasyon sa ating pong committee, Mr. Speaker.
Maraming salamat with that answer, Mr. Speaker. That's true. 2 years ago, ako, pag tumitingin po ako sa Meralco bill ko, nung mga una, syempre mura. So, you don't care about it anymore. Parang 2,000 lang, 3,000 lang. Sige, wag na yan. Okay lang yan. Pero nung tumaas na po yan, naging 10,000, naging 15,000, nagiging, nagiging conscious ka, ano ba ito? Bakit ganun? So, you start looking at the back of the Meralco bill and try to read all the charges. Makikita natin, generation rate, transmission rate, distribution rate, PIT all, universal, ano pa ba, mga system loss, And we need to understand all those kind of technical words that coming from the distribution utility. Hindi ba natin napapansin, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes the power sector industry, the distribution, transmission, they tend to confuse us. They tend to put words that beyond the capacity of ordinary people to understand. Don't you know that somehow meron silang sinister effort to really confuse us? Don't you think that is the real intention of those sector that is charging us so much? I believe there is, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker. Because at first, kapag tinignan mo yung generation rate, ano ba tong generation rate? Di ba mas maganda ilagay nila dito, presyo ng binibili mong kuryente. Anong klaseng kuryente? Coal ba yan? Gas ba yan? Hydro ba yan? Solar ba yan? Di ba? Transmission rate. Sometimes, ordinary tao, hindi rin maintindihan kung ano yung transmission rate, yung dumadaan sa ating high cable wire. May rate po yan. And that pa lang, overcharge na tayo. Katulad nung binanggit ko po the last time that nag-privilege speech po ako, that our WACC, weighted average cost of capital, paulit-ulit ko pong sasabihin to, na yung weighted average cost of capital ng transmission rate ay mali na ang komputasyon na last computation po nila ay 2009 pa na ang kanilang indicator during that time ay napakataas. And that's the reason why our distinguished colleague from Isabela, kaya tumataas pa rin yung inyong ating bill. Dahil dito sa mga sinasabi natin transmission rate, sa inyo kasi distribution, walang profit dahil electric cooperative kayo Pero sa transmission rate, kasama kayo sa Luzon Grid. And that's the reason why nagbabayad din po kayo doon sa kuryenteng dumadaan from power plant to transmission to Selco. Kumbaga, natcha-charge pa rin tayo ng overcharging ng NGCP pagdating po dito sa transmission rate. In other words, Mr. Speaker, I think it's high time. It's high time for all of us, representatives of the different provinces and district in the whole nation, to find out each and every detail of the rate being charged to all of us. After all, we are consumers. At kahit piso ang in-overcharge sa atin at niloko sa atin na mga sektor na ito, they are responsible to give it back to all of us. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to join our dear colleague, Congressman Ino D, for coming out with this revelation in their province about the high cost of electricity. May we see each other in the budget hearing of the Department of Energy and ERC. Maraming po salamat at mabuhay po kayong lahat.
Maraming salamat, Kong Dan Fernandez.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to recognize the gentleman from Party List Philreca, Honorable Presley De Jesus, for his manifestation.
The Honorable De Jesus is recognized for his
Thank you, Mr.
manifestation.
Speaker. I would like to make a manifestation, no? Kagaya sinabi po ni Kong Fernandez na it's high time talaga, no? Para malaman natin kung sino talaga ang may kasalanan, no? Because it's easy to blame someone na hindi naman lumalaban. So it's high time. And I heard Congressman Konghon, also from Mindoro, lahat nagre-reklamo na. But just to make a manifestation again, with regard to what Congressman Fernandez said a while ago, na back then, totoo na coal ang pinakamura. Back then, 2010, Mr. Speaker, kung saan yung kasagsagan ng presyo ng coal ay 2 piso lang, minsan 3 piso. So, that time, 2010, the renewable energy, no? Ay mahal masyado, 10 pesos. That's why all the electric cooperatives ay pumasok sa coal. So they enjoyed for several years na mababa. But now, because of the war in Ukraine, ito pong presyo ng crude oil ay tumaas. Tinamaan po sila lahat. So, when it comes yung sinasabi naman na yung mga sobrang fees, no, service fee, yan po ay regulated ng ERC. So again, it's high time na kailangan dumating ang ERC Ipatawag sila para malaman talaga kung anong nangyari. But again, Mr. Speaker, ang electric cooperatives, non-stock, non-profit, at ako rin po ay nagbabayad ng kuryente. Ayaw ko rin po magbayad ng mahal na kuryente. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the speech of the Honorable D and its interpellation be referred to the Committee on Rules for its appropriate action.
The privileged speech of the Honorable Ino D, along with the interpellations of the Honorable Gomez, the Honorable De Jesus, the Honorable Kong Hoon, and the Honorable Fernandez, are hereby all referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the gentleman from the 1st District of Albay, the Honorable Edsel Lagman, be recognized to avail the privilege hour.
The Honorable Edsel C. Lagman of the 1st District of Albay is recognized for his privileged speech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, esteemed colleagues, yesterday we commemorated National Heroes Day to celebrate the great lives of Filipinos who courageously fought for justice, freedom, and democracy. Today, we give tribute to a special class of heroes, many without official recognition, although about 30 of them are honored by the Bantayog ng Mga Bayani Foundation. Their names, together with those of other patriots, who sacrificed life and liberty to defeat tyranny and terminate atrocity during the dark years of martial law, are inscribed on the wall of remembrance of the foundation. My brother, human rights and labor lawyer Herman Silagman, is one of them. Our honorees, also known as desaparecidos, are the victims of enforced disappearance, a state-sponsored multiple violation of human rights. Enforced or involuntary disappearance is a grave, forcible deprivation of liberty, perpetrated by public authorities or by private individuals or groups acting on the orders of or with the consent or acquiescence of the state or public authorities who refuse to disclose information about the fate and whereabouts of the disappeared person. Some of the victims surface alive, others are found dead, or their skeletal remains exhumed, but most are unaccounted for and could not be located. What crime did they commit to deserve such violent fate? Is it subversion? To constructively dissent or criticize laws and policies inimical to the people's rights and welfare? Is it anti-government to expose the banalities of public officials and their cronies? Is it a crime to advocate for progressive reforms? The causes advocated by the disappeared from the Marcos Sr. regime to the Marcos Jr. dispensation are basically the same. Food security, decent shelter, accessible and liberating education, job security and a living wage, price stability and prudent fiscal policy, sustainable human development, responsible and responsive governance, and respect, protection, and fulfillment of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Cognizance of the cruelty and inhumanity of enforced disappearance and to heighten awareness of the need to recognize and support the victims and their families, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution 65/209, declaring 30 August as International Day of the Victims of Enforced Disappearance. Observance of the UN-declared annual global event began in 2011. It should be pointed out, however, that the families of the disappeared and human rights defenders have marked 30 August as International Day of the Disappeared years before the official UN declaration. It should likewise be underscored that under both the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance and the Philippine Anti-Enforced or Involuntary Disappearance Act of 2012, victim, quote unquote, refers to the disappeared person and any individual who has suffered harm as a direct result of the enforced disappearance. Harm or injury takes various forms: physical, psychological, economic, or political. According to the families of the victims of involuntary disappearance, find, and I quote, no matter how firmly and proudly the families of the disappeared declare when they gather to pay tribute to their disappeared loved ones that they celebrate sterling lives of courageous and self-sacrificing patriots and freedom fighters, they still have to confront the harsh reality of traumatic loss, post-traumatic stress, stigma, economic deprivation, and/or political exclusion, unquote. Considering that enforced disappearances have been unabated, the Congress enacted Republic Act 10353 to prevent, suppress, investigate, prosecute, and penalize enforced disappearance and provide victims appropriate reparation. The law is the first and only legislation of its kind in Asia. It has been hailed worldwide as a model statute. The families of the disappeared steadfastly lobbied for the passage of this law for 16 long years. They and all the victims of enforced disappearance under Philippine jurisdiction deserve no less than a faithful and comprehensive enforcement of the law. Paying lip service to the measure is an affront to the memory of the disappeared and the struggles of their families for truth and justice. It is lamentable that nearly 10 years after it had taken effect, Republic Act 10353 is hardly or not effectively implemented. As enforced disappearances continue to be perpetrated against crusaders and dissenters, a law is only good as its implementation. As principal author of this law, I call for an inquiry into the implementation of Republic Act 10353, require pertinent reports from implementing government agencies and the Commission on Human Rights on how they are enforcing the law. Look into the adequacy of funding, support, and the utilization of funds, and recommend remedial measures toward the full and strict implementation of this act. With the compelling demands on the state to fulfill its wide-ranging obligations to the victims of enforced disappearance and allied human rights violations, the chief of state cannot afford to temporize as a duty bearer. Every chief of state should keep in mind that administrations come and go, but the state has the continuing duty to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. In this light, it is now the responsibility of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to exercise his power and duty as chief of the state to cause the surfacing of the disappeared from the Marcos Sr. regime down to the succeeding administrations, including the current administration, where 3 desaparecidos have been reported. Disclose the truth behind its disappearance, bring the perpetrators to justice, fully mend the harm done to the victims, and put an end to the horrific crime of enforced disappearance. Today, Mr. Speaker, esteemed colleagues, let us commit not to add any new victim to the long list of desaparecidos and spare families the pain and anguish of truth untold, justice denied, and hope quashed as despair prevails. Mr. Speaker, esteemed colleagues, verily, desaparecidos are martyrs and heroes. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of Honorable Ed Salagman to the Committee on Rules for its appropriate action.
The privileged speech of the Honorable Edsel Silagman of the 1st District of Albay is referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the manifestation made by the Honorable Presley De Jesus be referred to the Committee on Rules.
The manifestation of the Honorable De Jesus is referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we terminate the privilege hour.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. Motion is approved and the privilege hour is terminated. Majority Leader.
Speaker, I move that we suspend session for a few minutes.
Session suspended. Session resumes. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the change of referral of the following measures. House Bill numbers 503, 639, 2174, 2628, 2759, 3035, 3045, 3090, 3613, and 3637, mandating the institutionalization, development, training, organization, and administration of Basic Reserve Officers Training Course, or ROTC. From the Committee on Basic Education and Culture to the Committee on Basic Education and Culture and Higher and Technical Education. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Change of referral of the following measure, House Bill number 1159, 1692, 2339, and 3437, reinstating the mandatory Reserves Officers Training Corps for all students in all private and public universities, colleges, technical or vocational schools, and other similar learning institutions. From the Committee on Higher and Technical Education to the Committees on Basic Education and Culture and Higher and Technical Education. House Bill number 996, creating and establishing the National Academy
Is there any objection to the motion? The chair hears none. The change of referral is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I further move for the change of referral of House Bill number 996, creating and establishing the National Academy for Technical and Vocational Skills System, from the Committee on Higher and Technical Education to the Committees on Basic Education and Culture and Higher and Technical Education. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection to the motion? The chair hears none. The motion is approved and the change of referral is approved.
Thank you,
Leader.
Mr. Speaker. Another change of referral, House Bill number 1177, institutionalizing the One Tablet, One Student program for all students enrolled in public schools and state universities and colleges. From the Committee on Higher and Technical Education to the Committees on Basic Education and Culture and Higher and Technical Education. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The change of referral is approved. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Another change of referral, House Bill number 491, strengthening the Philippine footwear, leather goods, and tannery industries. From the Committee on Trade and Industry to the Special Committee on Creative Industry and Performing Arts. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The change of referral is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I further move for the change of referral of House Resolution numbers 103, 105, 123, 131, 138, 147, 207, and 246. Congratulating and commending Ernest John E.J. Obiena for being the first Filipino and Asian athlete to win a bronze medal in the World Athletics Championships. From the Committee on Youth and Sports Development to the Committee on Rules. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. Motion is approved, and the change of referral is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we move to suspend session for a few minutes.
Session suspended. Session resumes. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the majority, I move that we elect the following members to the various committees as follows. To the Committee on Poverty Alleviation as Chairperson, Romero Michael L. To the Committee on Public Information as Chairperson, Aquino Jose II S. To the Committee on Agrarian Reform as Vice Chairperson, Villarica Linabel Ruth R. To the Committee on Agriculture and Food as members, Singson Richelle Farinas, Rudy Cesar G. To the Committee on Constitutional Amendments as Vice Chairperson, U. Divina Grace C. To the Committee on Dangerous Drugs as Vice Chairperson, Gomez Richard I. To the Committee on Energy as members, Sakaluran Princess Rihan M. To the Committee on Ethics and Privileges as Vice Chairperson, Vergara Rosana Ria V. To the Committee on Games and Amusements as member, Cajon Uy Marie Mitzi L. To the Committee on Health as member, Singson Richelle. To the Committee on Information and Communications Technology as member, Benitez Jose Francisco Kiko B. To the Committee on Labor and Employment as Vice Chairpersons, Cahayon Uy Mary Mitzi L. Tambunting Gus S. To the Committee on Legislative Franchises as Vice Chairperson, Pimentel Johnny T. To the Committee on Local Government as members, Gomez Richard I. Cahayon Uy Mary Mitzi L. To the Committee on People's Participation as member, Chua Joel R. To the Committee on Poverty Alleviation as member, Chua Joel R. To the Committee on Public Accounts as member, Olivares Edwin L. To the Committee on Public Information as member, Martinez Eric M. To the Committee on Public Works and Highways as member, Cahayon Uy Mary Mitzi L. To the Committee on Revision of Laws as Vice Chairperson, Veloso Tuason Ana Victoria Zamora Isabel Maria J. Domingo Danny A. To the Committee on Transportation as Vice Chairperson, Ang James Jojo Jr. A. To the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Welfare as Vice Chairperson, Primicias Agabas Marlene L. To the Committee on Ways and Means as members, Cahayon Uy Marimitzi L. Versosa Samuel Jr. S. To the Committee on Women and Gender Equality as member, Ko Olga Arati. To the Special Committee on Persons with Disabilities as Vice Chairperson, Primicias Agabas Marlene L. To the Special Committee on West Philippine Sea as Vice Chairperson, Dimaporo Muhammad Khalid Q. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. The motion is approved and the aforementioned members are elected to their respective stated positions. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there being no pending business for the day, I move that we adjourn session until tomorrow, August 31, 2 p.m. Wednesday. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Session is adjourned until tomorrow, August 31 at 2 p.m.
Sama kami.